It's finally the big day of that super hyped awakening ceremony, and students from all the fancy noble families have shown up to flex and show what they're made of. The deal is simple. You gotta hit this massive, ridiculously tough steel wall and leave a solid mark on it. The bigger the damage, the higher your score. Easy as that. First up is some kid from a lower family. He pours everything he's got into one big swing and leaves behind nothing but a sad little scratch. Oof. Then come the absolute elites from the top families across the continent. These guys are loaded with mana, and one by one they go all out. But even with all that power, the wall barely gets messed up. Still, everyone's convinced that your average student doesn't stand a damn chance against talents like them. And yet, here comes our boy Theo Ragnar, stepping into the lobby like he owns the place, even though he's clearly outscaled. He's the bastard child of the Ragnar noble family, the ones with dragon blood running through their veins. But because he's the illegitimate kid, his pure-blooded siblings have always treated him like absolute garbage. To them, he's just an NPC, a pathetic weakling at the bottom of the barrel. So obviously, all his siblings and the rest of the spectators are betting this kid is gonna crash and burn hard. But Theo, he doesn't show even a hint of hesitation. He struts into the arena full of main character energy, grabs his sword, walks up to that steel wall and swings like a beast. His slash is so clean and precise it slices right through the steel like a hot knife through butter. The whole crowd's jaws hit the fucking floor. It's an insane, unprecedented flex that completely shatters every expectation they had. And honestly, their shock makes total sense. See, Theo wasn't always this much of a giga-chad. For over 1,000 years, the powerful Ragnar clan has been the northern defensive wall of the Empire, all thanks to their special dragon-inherited physique. Every member is born with crazy magical power, insane endurance, and natural sword talent. Except for Theo. Because he had zero talent, everyone wrote him off as a worthless bastard and treated him like trash, even his own sword teacher. Then one day, their family estate gets attacked. Theo couldn't do shit. He gets mortally wounded, and that's when he finally sees who's behind it. It's Randon, his own master, the one who betrayed him. Randon laughs in his face and says he watched Theo train every single morning. All that effort, all that struggling, it was completely pointless. No matter how hard he tried, he was never going to get anywhere. Then Randon swings his sword and chops off Theo's arm. Blood's pouring everywhere as Theo collapses, screaming in pain. Randon grabs him by the head, lifts him up, and says, "Everything happening right now is your fault, Theo." He forces him to watch Rose's palace burning and tells him his whole family is dying because he's too weak. Then someone drags over his mother's lifeless body and drops it right in front of him. Randon coldly says her death is on him too. Broken and bleeding, Theo still tries to fight back. He grabs his sword again and charges at the bastard. But before he can even get close, another guy throws a sword straight through Theo's body. The impact sends him flying, and he crashes hard onto the ground. Renon casually apologizes, saying he just got carried away remembering the past. As Theo lies there, the world starts fading away. He regrets how damn weak he was, and then everything goes dark. But it doesn't end there. He regresses back in time, carrying his hidden traits and skills with him. Theo opens his eyes again, and standing right in front of him is that same bastard Rendon. Looks like they're in the middle of sword training. Rendon tries to snap him out of it for spacing out so hard, but Theo has no clue what the hell is going on. He wonders if he's having flashbacks of his life and can't believe the face he's seeing is Randon's annoying mug. Feels like a cruel joke from the universe. Suddenly, a system window pops up right in front of him. Theo just stares at it, completely clueless. The system tells him to punch Randon in the face as part of his tutorial quest. At this point, Theo's more confused than ever. He wonders if this is how flashbacks are supposed to work. He also notices that Renon can't see the system window at all. Well, Theo isn't complaining. He drops his training stick, balls up his fist, and with everything he's got, lands a solid punch right on the bastard's face. When the punch connects, Randon's expression doesn't even change. He has no idea what the hell that was about. Meanwhile, our boy smirks to himself, thinking how crazy realistic everything feels. Randon finally reacts in anger and throws a solid attack at Theo, sending him crashing backward. Theo's annoyed that he has to deal with this pain even in his flashback. The bastard master just sighs and explains that he gets why Theo might be frustrated, especially with the awakening ceremony coming up soon and his lack of progress. But he still can't forgive a student who lashes out at their master. The mention of the awakening ceremony hits Theo like a truck. That event happened almost 10 years before his death. Rendome keeps berating him for his behavior and walks away, saying he'll see him in the next lesson. The other clan members snicker among themselves, calling him an imbecile for blaming his master when he's the real talentless one. While his peers keep throwing insults at him, Theo finally starts piecing it together. He scratches at the ground and can feel it clearly under his fingers. Then he looks at the injury Renon gave him earlier, and the realistic pain hits him hard. It becomes crystal clear. He isn't just flashing back. He's actually going back 10 years in time to when he was only 17 years old. Right on cue, another system window pops up congratulating him for completing the tutorial quest. As a reward, Ragnar's talent has been activated. The system asks if he wants to receive the reward. Without hesitation, Theo presses yes. Arcane energy shimmers in the middle of his chest as the system confirms the reward. All his stats will now increase at an incredible speed. Cut to the Rose Palace. That same filthy bastard is having tea with Theo's mother. He reports to her that he's never seen anyone as talentless as her son. But then he flashes a broad grin and says that's exactly why he's here. The true teacher, Randon, will do his best to make Theo strong enough for the awakening ceremony in 5 months, at least. The lady of the Rose Palace, Cecilia Ragnar, smiles and says she'll happily leave him in Randon's capable hands. She also hands over a fat bag full of gold coins and tells him to give Theo a bit more attention. The filthy bastard takes the money with a smile and tries to reassure her that she doesn't have to worry at all. In response, she says she isn't worried one bit because she believes in her Theo. Later, we see Randon walking down the corridor with the bag of money in his hand, grinning like an idiot. He's thrilled he's getting paid such a handsome amount just to teach Theo absolutely nothing. He smirks to himself, thinking both mother and son are total imbeciles. Not only is he getting paid to train someone from Ragnar's direct line, but he's also going to get rewarded by his real master for leaking all of Theo's secrets and sabotaging his growth. It's the kind of sweet deal he's never had before. Meanwhile, Theo comes sprinting down the same corridor at full speed and zooms right past Randon. His so-called master just scoffs and calls him an idiotic loser as he runs by. Theo was rushing to meet his mother. As he approaches, he calls out to her. When she turns around, she sees him completely out of breath. Without saying a word, Theo pulls her into a tight hug and starts crying, overwhelmed just from seeing her alive again. This moment finally convinces him that he really has returned 10 years into the past. The painful memory of Randon forcing him to watch his mother's lifeless body flashes through his mind. But now, seeing her warm and breathing fills him with real happiness. He's now determined to change the future for her sake. If that mysterious system window is real, he knows he can grow stronger thanks to Ragnar's talent trait. He's sure he'll become powerful enough to hold his own in the damn war for the throne. Most importantly, he's dead set on getting strong enough to take revenge on that piece of shit Randon. The second tutorial quest pops up, telling Theo to train his body to the limit. It's still early as hell in the morning. The sun hasn't even risen yet, but Theo is already hard at work, fueled by pure thoughts of revenge against Randon. He knows he needs to get stronger as fast as possible. In his previous life, he was part of an intelligence agency called Blackword, but he was stuck doing information work and never given any big combat roles because he lacked the skills. He never thought he'd end up using all that info like this. One thing he clearly remembers is the potion that greatly empowers the body, the Bloody Sword Emperor Elixir. Its true worth will show up later through the secret manuals. Most importantly, he recalls the extreme training he gave up on before because of his lack of talent. But now that he has Ragnar's talent, he's sure he can actually gain strength if he pushes hard. His face twists with a happy grin as he notices his running speed is increasing, and the system window promptly shows his progress too. Other clan members who showed up at the training halls are pretty bewildered to see him running without getting tired. They start wondering if he's always been this fit. Afterward, he swings his sword and can definitely tell he's swinging faster than ever before. A few days later, we find him still practicing in the dead of night. That's when we meet the training ground manager, Evelyn Nerveville. She's yawning and feeling tired as she watches him. She reflects on how he's been training without sleep for days now and starts wondering if he really is the talentless fool everyone says he is. On the other hand, Theo is so exhausted he feels like he's about to collapse, but seeing that progress bar going higher and higher keeps him going. Just last night, he was totally wiped out from all the training. He had hit 90% progress, but the second he took a little break to rest, the damn percentage dropped back to 89. That's exactly why he's been practicing like a madman, pushing himself without even thinking about what speed means anymore. Now he's hit 98%, so he cranks it up even more, knowing he's so damn close. After one final brutal push, He's completely exhausted and can barely breathe, but there's still 1% left. Somehow, he squeezes out every last drop and finally sees that beautiful three-digit number he's been dying for. The system immediately congratulates him for completing the tutorial quest and tells him he's obtained the dragon heart as a reward. But before he can even read all the juicy details, he faints from pure exhaustion. The system just hovers over him, asking if he wants to receive the reward now. His hand trembles as he tries to lift it, but he barely manages to press yes. The second he accepts the reward, a blue light engulfs him. The hall manager watches the whole thing in total disbelief as he powers up. A while later, Theo wakes up in a room. As soon as he opens his eyes and looks around, Evelyn appears and reassures him that he's in the break room of Training Ground 4. She tells him there was no need to push himself that hard. When Theo sees her, he recognizes her right away, which surprises her. She introduces herself formally as the manager of the 4th training ground. She explains that he lost consciousness while training alone early that morning, so she brought him here to rest. Theo thanks her for her kindness. She offers him some water and reminds him that within the Ragnar clan, opening one's mana hall before the official awakening ceremony is strictly forbidden. Theo has no idea why she's bringing this up, but he nods and says he's aware of the rule. She then asks if he knows why she's questioning him. He still looks confused and asks why she's pressing him like this. That's when she tells him that right when he passed out, there was a mana wave that perfectly matched the opening of a mana hall. With a serious, almost menacing look, she demands to know if he opened his mana hall. Theo is completely clueless about what she's talking about at first, but then he remembers what happened right before he blacked out. He got the dragon heart as a reward, and as a bonus for clearing the quest early, he also received the magic power of 10 of his past lives. When that hits him, he's at a total loss for words. Getting a dragon heart is no joke. You see, a dragon heart is special because a mana hall can be placed inside it. Having the mana hall in the heart lets it work way more efficiently. Normal humans, unlike dragons, usually put their mana hall in the lower abdomen because the human heart can't handle that kind of power. That's why every warrior, especially in the Ragnar clan, dreams of getting a dragon heart. It's the fastest way to become ridiculously strong without the usual limitations. Humans have never been able to overcome the natural limits of their hearts, until now. With the dragon heart given to Theo as a quest reward, he's suddenly in a pretty awkward situation. The rewards are insane, but they've also put him in a tricky spot. On top of that, he's sitting in front of Evelyn Nerveville, a high-ranking swordswoman who retired after losing her left arm and now manages the training grounds. She used to be the commanding officer of the white-armored dragon cavalry, and her skills were so impressive that even the demon dragon respected her. Known for her fierce principles, she doesn't give a damn about status or strength. She can't stand dishonesty or cowardice. At one point, when she found him too inflexible, she even gave up her position as his direct master. In other words, if she discovers his dragon heart and mana hall, he could very well lose his head. But Theo just smiles. He's already got a plan. As long as he doesn't get caught, there's nothing to worry about. He hits her with a sassy comeback, asking how she can talk about executing him just based on a gut feeling. He questions if she can handle the consequences of throwing around words like that. The girl falls silent, unable to counter him. Theo keeps pushing, reminding her that he's also an heir of the Ragnar clan. If they find out her suspicions against him are baseless and false, it could be seen as defiling the Ragnar name. She agrees, acknowledging that those are the rules. With a menacing look, he asks if she knows what the punishment is for humiliating an heir. She confidently replies that it's execution. He's glad she understands and tells her to think before she speaks next time. The lady is completely blown away by this new side of him and wonders if this is really the same person she knew. Still, she's sure she saw a mana wave, so she decides to investigate further, even if he carries Ragnar blood. Rules are rules, and she's going to hold him accountable. However, she soon realizes that he actually doesn't have a mana hall. Her expression drops as she understands she might have been wrong. Theo feels pretty cocky and asks if she's satisfied now. According to the rules, she sits down at his feet without hesitation and tells him to just execute her. She says she'll pay for her sins with her lowly life. As she bows her head lower and lower, Theo reveals to us that dragon hearts are different from ordinary mana halls. The existence of a dragon heart is basically a mana hall that the user can control freely. In other words, he can hide his mana whenever he wants. Plus, the fact that humans can even possess a dragon heart won't be discovered for a few more years, so Theo is confident no one can accuse him of having one. Instead of executing her, he places a reassuring hand on her back and tells her there's no need for that. He walks away, saying she did her job and that not many people would risk their lives to demand the truth from an heir. He appreciates her righteousness, but the real reason, Theo just doesn't want to kill her because she's one of the strongest around. Keeping her alive will benefit him big time in the long run. He then explains that the restriction on opening mana halls before the awakening ceremony is meant to prevent overflow. He's glad to see her actually concerned about someone like him, a bastard of Ragnar. And with that, he leaves her sitting there quietly. Theo walks off confidently, feeling on top of the world as he remembers that not only does he have the dragon heart, but he also gained 10 years worth of magic power from his past lives. A few days later, we see Randon screaming at Theo again, telling him to swing a bit more to the right. Theo is pretending to be weak, and it's getting harder and harder to sit there and listen to Randon insult him every chance he gets. Theo can't help but notice how this bastard is subtly, but deliberately, teaching him weird sword techniques. He's becoming more certain that there's a mastermind behind Randon's actions. He's convinced that the person who gave him that final blow in his previous life must be the true mastermind. Theo decides it's time to find out who that mastermind is. A smirk spreads across his face as he realizes exactly what he should do next. Meanwhile, Randon keeps yelling at him, and that's when Theo finally snaps. He breaks the training stick he was holding clean in two. He lets this jerk know he can't listen to his yapping anymore because his lessons are utter trash. He asks the piece of shit how he even became a mid-rank swordsman with such garbage skills. To really twist the knife, Theo adds that he'd probably struggle against low-level demonic beasts. Of course, Randon takes the bait and is fuming now, but Theo isn't backing down. He strides right up to the old man and makes it crystal clear again that his skills are pathetic. Theo's plan is simple: provoke Randon hard enough that he resigns from his position, and if things go south, Theo's sure this bastard will run straight to his mastermind. The scene shifts to Camellia Palace. A man bursts into a pub with a huge grin on his face. He calls out to someone named Axion and announces to everyone that the bastard of Ragnar is going to duel his master next week. Axion just sits there silently, unable to even lift his glass off the table. The excited guy keeps rambling about how Theo was blaming his instructor for his lack of talent and how he's confident Theo will end up disabled after the duel. Suddenly, the glass Axion was holding smashes straight into the loud guy's face, knocking him out cold with one hit. The guy is seriously pissed off and makes it clear he doesn't give a damn if some bastard ends up half disabled. After all, he's another Ragnar, specifically one of the four hounds of the north, the dark tiger Axion Ragnar. The man standing next to him is Remington Narcio, one of the four hounds of the north, the Silver Lion. Just then, another guy walks in, a pissed-off Ed Trovan, the nine-dragon sky dragon. He looks worried and says things might go wrong if they let their guard down, but Axion reassures him that this only applies to people with actual talent, so they don't need to worry about Theo, who's basically a muddle-headed nobody. Ed points out that with the Ragnar clan, unprecedented things can happen even from the slightest possibility. Axion just shrugs it off, saying it's actually a good thing Theo is messing with Randon. That means the instructor should be more than capable of handling their boy. A week later, a big crowd gathers at Training Ground 4, not just clan members, but plenty of other big shots too. In the arena stands Theo, looking pretty anxious under the gaze of hundreds of spectators. He curses himself, remembering how he just wanted to get Randon fired after the humiliation, but things have spiraled way out of control. Still, he isn't too worried. This was supposed to happen, and he's fired up to get his revenge on Randon. The system notification pops up, confirming that his third tutorial quest is to fight Randon and win. We flash back to the moment Theo confronted Randon about his pathetic skills. He straight up told him he's fired and can get lost. Randon tried to protest, claiming there was still time left on the contract, but Theo countered that since he's being fired by the employer himself, there's nothing left to discuss. Theo would have loved to punch the bastard in the face right then, but he wasn't sure about his own abilities yet. On the other hand, Randon couldn't afford to get fired since he hadn't accomplished his main goal yet. As Randon walked toward Theo, trying to convince him otherwise, a system window flashed in front of Theo's eyes, stating he must fight and win against Randon. This completely blindsides him, and right at that moment, Evelyn Nerveville pops into the scene and encourages Theo to settle this the Ragnar way, the rule of the strong. A sword match will decide everything. No need for some boring tribunal. Just follow the will of the victor. The old bastard sees his chance and quickly jumps on board, saying it's a brilliant idea to solve the dispute. This leaves Theo at a total loss for what to do. Evelyn keeps insisting it's a great plan, but Theo isn't so sure. He doesn't feel ready to beat this bastard yet. But somehow, Theo ends up confronting Randon anyway. The crowd smirks among themselves, whispering about how pathetic Theo is. They say he doesn't even know how to swing a sword properly and are sure he's going to get crippled today. There's no way he can beat a mid-rank swordsman. Randon cockily tells our hero that if he apologizes now, he'll pretend none of this happened. No need to risk his life over pride. But Theo's got sass for days and fires back, saying Randon should be the one apologizing. He warns the old bastard that if he doesn't want to become a one-armed swordsman, he'd better accept he's been fired and leave quietly. Randon just smirks with a big grin, thinking the fight is already in his hands. He decides to take full advantage and kill Theo while making it look like an accident. Once the battle starts, Randon invites Theo to come at him first, giving the first strike as his teacher. Theo charges in with his sword raised. Everyone's jaw drops seeing this imbecile rushing in so recklessly, not even knowing how to swing properly. Randon delivers a few sword strikes, but Theo manages to block them. The old bastard keeps up his barrage of swings. As he corners Theo, he thinks to himself that this is the obvious result. After all, Theo isn't even a low-ranked swordsman, he's just an apprentice. He believes that while Theo's skills might have improved a tiny bit, it's still not enough. If Theo were at least on the level of the four hounds of the north, it would be a different story. But there's no way this imbecile from the Ragnar clan could ever beat him. The scene flashes back a few days earlier. Theo turns to Evelyn and asks her what the hell she was thinking when she suggested the match. She simply replies that she was trying to help him. If he wants to cut Randon out, he needs to be smart about it. She strongly believes Randon has someone backing him, so just firing him won't solve the real problem. Theo asks how she knows all this. She says it was obvious from the bizarre sword style Randon was teaching him. She had someone secretly investigate the guy. Theo is bewildered. In his past life, Evelyn didn't bother catching this, but now she's making an effort just because the Manor Hall incident caught her interest. She explains that her investigation showed all of Randon's traces lead back to Camellia Palace. That's not surprising to Theo. He's more annoyed realizing this is all because of that miserable war for the throne. But he quickly shakes off the anger and says it's impressive she figured out this much. He admits that with his current skills, he's afraid he can't beat Randon yet. So he asks what she plans to do now. Evelyn tells him straight up that he can beat Randon and advises him to stop underestimating his own potential so much. Back in the fight, Randon keeps throwing one heavy blow after another, but Theo fends off all the attacks like they're no big deal. This is making Randon wonder what the hell happened to this brat. He's clearly not the Theo Ragnar he knew. The tables have completely turned, and now it's Randon who's struggling hard. Everyone in the crowd can feel the sting of defeat coming. We also spot this hooded guy, probably Remington, shitting his pants in some corner of the seating area. Meanwhile, Evelyn is having the time of her life watching the fight. For some reason, she's genuinely proud of him. The scene shifts to the past. In just 1 week, she personally trained him. She admits it's technically against the rules for her to do so, but since Randon is a jerk who doesn't deserve to be a teacher anyway, she went for it. This revelation puts a big smirk on Theo's face. He's feeling a mix of excitement and satisfaction, thinking having Evelyn in his debt was totally worth it. Still, there's one thing he's curious about. He wants to know her real reason for going this far to help him. He asks if it's because of what happened last time. She agrees that's part of it, but also mentions there's someone she knows who would like him. That guy is obsessed with collecting talent. Back in the present, The battle rages on, and Randon is getting more desperate by the minute. He starts wondering if this brat has been acting like an idiot and pretending to be weak on purpose all along. In the middle of the fight, Theo asks him straight up who's backing him. This makes the old bastard lash out, asking what the hell he means. But Theo reminds him that he already knows Randon was teaching him trash lessons on purpose. He gets blunt and asks if he's working with Camellia Palace. The old coot is stunned for a moment, and his reaction confirms everything to Theo. With that cleared up, Theo swings his sword the very next moment and severs the old man's hand clean off. The amputated hand flies through the air, leaving the entire crowd absolutely boggled. The wannabe teacher cries out in pain and starts cursing under his breath. Theo strides toward him confidently, finally feeling like he's actually gotten stronger. He reminds the old bastard of the exact words he said in his past life, that everything was Theo's fault because he was a weak, talentless fool. With a menacing swing, Theo throws those same words right back in his face, telling him he is the weakest one here. Given Ragnar's belief in the rule of the strong, someone as weak as him shouldn't have come here in the first place. Then, with one final swing, the sword comes down and the fucker's head rolls across the ground, blood splattering everywhere. The system window pops up right away, congratulating him for successfully completing Tutorial Quest 3. Not only did he win the fight, he exceeded the objective, so he earned a bonus reward. The system asks if he wants to receive the reward now, and of course, we already know his answer. Everyone in the crowd has basically sharted their pants. It's mind-boggling to watch an apprentice swordsman straight up slaughter a mid-tier swordsman like that. Meanwhile, Theo's thinking this old bastard was ridiculously weak. He's actually embarrassed he ever suffered at the hands of someone like that in his past life. But hey, things are definitely different this time around. The system then reveals that the ability Observation has been activated as a reward. As an additional bonus, he gained 1 year of magic power. That's when a man comes crashing down from the sky, slamming into the ground like a goddamn meteor. Before Theo can even react, the man shouts his name with a wide grin. The man in question is none other than Julius Ragnar, the demon dragon, and commander of the white armored dragon cavalry. Theo is absolutely stunned to see him. He can't believe it's really him and starts wondering how long he's been watching the whole thing. Meanwhile, the crowd is losing their minds. This guy is the commander of the white armored dragon cavalry, and everyone's freaking out trying to figure out why someone of his rank is even here. Theo figures this must be the guy Evelyn was talking about, the one obsessed with collecting talent. We see Evelyn looking absolutely devastated and dejected that the commander just destroyed the flooring with his dramatic landing. On the other hand, Julius looks like a total beast. His terrifying appearance leaves Theo sweating and completely unsure what to do next. But his worries turn out to be unnecessary. The man just laughs, flashing a big, broad grin. He looks like a friendlier version of Brutus from Popeye. He gives Theo some gentle pats on the back, which honestly aren't that gentle at all. He keeps laughing and says he's quite surprised to see someone carrying this much talent. He adds that it was a little disrespectful to kill his teacher, but admits Randon deserved every bit of it. Then he bursts into laughter again, pats Theo on the shoulder, and promptly invites him to join the white armored dragon cavalry. Evelyn had already expected this, while the entire crowd stands there with their jaws hanging open, struggling to believe that the infamous Julius Ragnar just scouted someone as inexperienced as Theo for the elite white armored knights. We catch another glimpse of Remington. He asks the guy next to him if he's ever heard of an apprentice swordsman who hasn't even gone through the awakening ceremony, getting scouted. The stranger looks unsure and admits he's never heard of anything like it. Of course, Remington knows this too. It's never happened in the entire history of their world. Meanwhile, in Theo's head, he's thinking it's impossible to truly gauge someone's potential while their mana hall is still closed. Even if their swordsmanship is exceptional, their magical power could be lacking. So no matter how great Julius Ragnar is, he can't be entirely sure about Theo. Still, he wonders if the demon dragon can actually see that kind of potential in him. Theo quickly declines the offer, doing so flatly without a shred of hesitation or doubt on his face. Julius looks like he just bit into a sour lemon. The crowd is in total shock too. jaws on the floor at how coldly Theo turned down such a prestigious invitation. There's a heavy moment of silence in the entire hall as everyone processes what just happened. As the day passes, news of the incident spreads like wildfire throughout the clan. Everyone's talking about how this young Master Theo, the one everyone saw as an imbecile, destroyed his teacher, and when the demon dragon tried to recruit him into the white armored dragon cavalry, he straight up turned it down. Opinions are split on whether he's being humble or just plain arrogant. The scene transitions to Camellia Palace. We see a lady who looks pretty pissed off that Randon has been killed and everything has gone off the rails. She is the lady of Camellia Palace, Amelie Ragnar. A man steps in to assure her not to worry, reminding her that Randon was a noob who was only assigned because of his terrible skills. She brushes it off, saying his death isn't a major concern. The man speaking to her is her brother, Sky Dragon Ed Trovan, the same guy we saw at the pub earlier. She explains that the demon dragon himself reached out to Theo. And what's even more troubling is that people are saying Evelyn ordered it. This means they can't interfere by assigning Theo a new master anymore. If Theo starts standing out, it'll become way harder to take control of the Rose Palace. At that moment, Axion enters the scene casually and asks why they're so worried. He reassures them that there's no way the clan head will take any interest in this situation, so their plan can proceed as usual. Emile asks if he understands that the best way to take control of the Rose Palace without offending the clan leader is for Theo to stay powerless. Her son acknowledges it and says he already knows, adding that he's certain Theo is still powerless. After all, how much could someone like him really have changed? He believes Evelyn and the demon dragon have always had a soft spot for underdogs, so there's no reason to make a big deal out of it. But Ed Trovan isn't feeling his nephew's nonchalant attitude and warns him not to take the situation lightly. That's when Axion pulls out a letter. With a sly grin, he says that since his mother and uncle are so worried, he'll just play with Theo a little and remind him of his place. Later, the scene shifts to the training grounds. Evelyn is giving Theo props for his solid practice session. He thanks her back, saying it's definitely different learning from a proper master like her. She mentions that it would have been better if he had joined the white armored dragon cavalry and asks why he turned down the offer. Theo thinks to himself for a second. It would be a lie to say he didn't regret rejecting that juicy offer. It was his dream in his past life. But he just smirks, knowing that joining now would actually hurt him in the long run. There's no reason to limit himself this early in the game. When he thinks about all the privileges that come with being at the top after the awakening ceremony, getting into the white armored dragon cavalry doesn't even compare. So he smiles and says he didn't want any special privileges and that he still feels he's not ready. He's satisfied just training with her for the awakening ceremony. Evelyn reminds him that the commander is probably pretty disappointed after getting rejected like that. At that moment, Theo decides to use his observation skill for the first time. He reads all of her stats and sees without a doubt that she's a high-ranking swordswoman. He learns that she admires his humility and character, and teaching him has given her a sense of energy and purpose that she hasn't felt in a long time. He also sees that she misses the white armored dragon cavalry. Theo is thrilled to realize just how useful this observation skill is. He squints a little when he reads the last line about her missing the cavalry. That part surprises him. That's when a guy enters the scene and introduces himself as Sybil Drea. He mentions he's come from the Southern Inspection Post and has something he needs to discuss with Theo. Theo finds the guy a bit intimidating and isn't sure what this discussion is going to be about. He decides to use his observation skill again and learns that Sybil has a strong longing to spar with him. The revelation makes him sweat with anxiety. He feels terrified at the thought of fighting someone with such a scary face. Right on cue, the system notification pops up with the 4th tutorial quest. His main goal is to discard the title of Imbecile of Ragnar, and he's already made almost 28% progress. Sybil was pretty frank with his intentions. He straight up said he wanted to follow young Master Theo. He even honestly admitted that he used to be one of those dumbasses in the crowd who just ignored Ragnar because he seemed totally untalented. Back then, he genuinely thought the whole Ragnar's imbecile label fit the guy perfectly. Theo appreciated the honesty, but damn, he couldn't help feeling a little pissed off. The bastard was basically bad-mouthing him without even realizing it. Sybil had a change of heart once he found out the young master was out there every morning training harder than anyone else. On top of that, he was seriously impressed seeing the results of all that hard work in the fight against that fraud Renan Harvey. The dude straight up reveled when the instructor's head went flying through the air. He was blown away watching Theo's insane growth up close. The image of demon dragon Julius Ragnar personally inviting the young master to join the white-armored dragon cavalry was burned into his mind. From that moment on, Sybil declared that Theo had become his idol. He was ready to give up on himself after being called the idiot of the Southern Inspection Office, but everything changed when Theo showed up. All he wanted now was a chance to cross swords with his hero. The young man's frankness was pretty shocking. Normally, Theo would be suspicious of anyone's real intentions, but his observation skill confirmed the guy was being completely genuine. Sybil held serious respect for Theo. All he really wanted was a good spar. Everything about him screamed honest. It was a bit unexpected, but Theo was genuinely pleased. After taking down Randon and with the rumors spreading about Lord Julius paying attention to him, he figured a bunch of jealous pricks with inferiority complexes would come swarming to test him. He never expected people would actually admire him and want to follow instead. Looks like some folks still have that real Ragnar pride running through their veins. This could actually work out great. Theo knew he'd need people he could trust in his circle, especially if he wants to become the clan head someday. Plus, he could use this to push forward on the final tutorial quest and finally ditch that damn imbecile title once and for all. It was a shitty nickname he could never shake in his past life. With the new chances the system gave him, he was determined to leave that embarrassing label behind for good. Theo turned to Evelyn and asked for permission to spar. His new master happily agreed, telling him to go ahead and show what he could do. With his blade raised in salute, he formally introduced himself. Theo Ragnar, apprentice swordsman of the Rose Palace, training under Master Evelyn Naravville and awaiting the awakening ceremony. The one-armed swordmaster smiled with approval. Sybil clumsily saluted back and introduced himself as an apprentice swordsman from the Southern Inspection Post. He said he inherited the swordsmanship of the Kurai clan and specialized in quicksword. Finally, the sparring session kicked off. Sybil blasted off the ground like a madman, going straight for the kill right from the start. Theo blocked the first strike, and their blades sparked hard on impact. The idiot of the Southern Inspection Post was undeniably fast. That was the one thing he was super confident about. Just from that first clash, Sybil could already tell the young master's skills were the real deal. Meanwhile, Theo was thinking, why the hell did they call this kid an idiot in the first place? If he had faced this guy in his previous life, he would have struggled to handle even a few hits. But of course, he'd come a long damn way since then. Theo went on the offensive and swung his blade, sending Sybil flying like a damn rag doll and knocking the sword right out of his hand. For the current Theo, this was straight up child's play. Poor Sybil almost puked his guts out from the massive hit to his solar plexus. He eventually crashed into the training area's stands, but luckily he wasn't badly hurt. Sybil forced himself to stand up and immediately started praising young Master Theo's sword mastery. He graciously conceded defeat with a big thank you. Theo stayed graceful in victory, saluted the guy, and told him it was a good fight. While holding his sword up in salute, he stared at his reflection on the shiny blade. A sudden idea hit him. Maybe he could use the observation skill on himself too. He tried it, and hell yeah, it actually worked. His talent showed up as observation, player, Ragnar, and a whole bunch more that were still locked. He was a level 1 swordsman with balanced stats and an insanely high 190 points in magic power. Now that he could finally see his stat points, they'd be shown as numbers from here on out. Under his talents, all his abilities were listed out clearly. Based on the locked slots, he figured he could just keep knocking out quests to unlock at least 4 more. Being able to check his own stats whenever he wanted was a pretty sweet discovery, too. Theo figured his crazy high magic power came from the magic he used in his past life, plus the dragon heart beating in his chest. What he didn't like one bit was the negative 49 points in luck. He wondered if he was straight up cursed with such shitty luck. Maybe all the misfortune from his previous life was because of this rotten stat. He definitely needed to find a way to boost his luck as fast as possible. Theo was so focused on the spar and checking his status that he didn't even notice the crowd of young guys who had gathered all around the arena. They had basically formed a full circle surrounding him, their intentions still unclear. He thought about it. Yeah, even though his previous instructor was weak and trashy, the bastard was still a mid-ranked swordsman. After beheading that fraud Randon and getting approval from a respected commander, it was only natural that these young swordsmen would show up. With Ragnar's whole rule of the strong motto, people usually had two reactions. They either got envious as hell or became huge admirers. As for the guys gathered in the arena, Evelyn could clearly see they belonged to the second group. They were amazed that the rumors about the young master were actually true. Respect and approval were written all over their faces. Each of them imagined themselves in Sybil's shoes during that spar, wondering if they could even block a single swing from Theo. That thought only made them want to clash blades with the young master even more. One of those young swordsmen was Iode Nayland. Theo scanned the crowd and was pretty pleased with their reaction. He singled out Nayland, which surprised the guy. The young master called him forward for a spar. Ood Nayland gave a solid salute and introduced himself as the third son of Viscount Nayland, specializing in double ascension swordsmanship. Theo returned the salute and casually wished him a good fight. Without wasting any more time on formalities, both of them got into position and started going at it. With every clash of their blades, Theo's basic swordsmanship proficiency kept rising steadily. EOD was no pushover. He was fast and clever enough to sneak in a slash that looked like it had no immediate counter. At that moment, Theo felt like the whole world slowed down. He quickly shifted his grip on the sword and met the attack with a perfectly angled block. It was enough to send the blade flying right out of the guy's hand. That crucial block boosted Theo's proficiency in the changing heart swordsmanship. Odd was completely stripped of his sword. It was a clear and utter defeat at the hands of the young master. The young man acknowledged his loss and gave Theo his full eternal approval. Much to Theo's surprise, gaining EOD's approval also bumped up his luck. Maybe luck is tied to reputation, he thought. If that was the case, he just found a solid way to fix his abysmal luck. He could just keep fighting and literally turn his luck around. Next up on the chopping block was Bernat Romero. That was an easy win. With another approval, his luck went up by one more point. Then came Eric Moran. He put up a decent fight, but it was still a struggle. After that, he got Manfred Nonbert's approval. Without slowing down his sparring rampage, he wiped the floor with Manuel Noir. The thuggish-looking Vero Perenc didn't even last a full minute. After a while, Theo was totally immersed in the battles and kept riding his winning streak through Daniel Riemann and the rest. By the time he'd gone through most of the young swordsmen, he was itching for more. He called for the next challenger, but nobody stepped up. He'd fought so much he was damn near exhausted, but when he checked his quest progress for ditching the imbecile title, it had only gone up by 1%. Maybe it's because these guys already approve of me, he figured. He might need to find stronger opponents or show off in front of the people who still look down on him. Either way, he'd need something different. Suddenly, a man pushed through the crowd and told Theo he looked exhausted. Theo argued that he'd rest when he actually needed to, but right now he could still keep going. Since he claimed he was still good to fight, the armored man known as the Silver Lion, Remington Narcio, formally asked for a sparring match. Theo and the crowd of young swordsmen weren't expecting someone so big to show up. After all, Remington was one of the 4 hounds of the North. Those 4, Hulkus Lanka, Ray Ragnar, Remington Nario, and Axion Ragnar from the Chamilia Palace, were known as the 4 strongest in the Awakening Ceremony generation under the Ragnar clan. Remington Narcio said he'd come early to observe the young lord's swordsmanship before the Awakening Ceremony. Saluting with a smile, he thanked Theo for accepting his request. The Silver Lion was a talented sword genius with sharp senses and crazy work ethic. Right now, he was honestly surprised to find an unexpected rival in Theo. Theo Ragnar returned the salute with pride. This time, he introduced himself as the 31st son of the great guardian of the North, Kyle Ragnar. He never expected to meet, let alone spar with, the sword genius Remington. He had respected this man a lot in his past life. When he said he was honored to cross swords with the famed young deputy clan head of Narcio, he really meant it. Immersed in the awesome rush of fighting non-stop, Theo just wanted to show Remington what he could do. Both of them were looking forward to one hell of a fight. Theo watched as the Silver Lion's aura exploded to a terrifying level. He couldn't help but wonder if his current self could actually beat Remington. Both fighters charged forward, blades smashing together with sparks flying everywhere. Just how strong is one of the four hounds of the North, Theo thought. Every single clash shook the whole stage like crazy. Theo kept his eyes locked on the prize while shards of steel flew all over the arena. Remington smiled and did the same. One of the swords got cleanly cut after taking too much wear and tear. Evelyn didn't take her eyes off them for a second, watching everything closely. The young swordsmen who had already lost to Theo were completely speechless. In the middle of the deathly silent arena, the sound of the broken blade clanging as it hit the ground echoed loudly. It was Theo's sword. In a single clash of pure strength, Remington sliced his blade clean in half, stopping his attack just inches away from lopping Theo's head off. To everyone watching, the result was crystal clear. Young Master Theo had lost. Sybil refused to believe his idol could get trounced that quickly, but it was the obvious outcome. They had to accept that no matter how much Theo had grown, beating one of the four hounds was still impossible. Those guys were the strongest of the current generation for a damn good reason. Sybil argued that the fighting spirit Theo showed was more than enough to admire. But then, to everyone's surprise, the White Lion suddenly declared that the duel was his loss. He respectfully saluted Theo, his form perfect as he humbly thanked the young lord for the fight. Remington pointed out that Theo's sword was already worn out before they even started, plus he was exhausted from all the previous fights. Theo insisted that on a real battlefield, no one would give him those kinds of excuses, so he accepted his defeat the moment he lost his blade. Remington gave him an understanding smile. The White Lion and the former imbecile shook hands, and a deeper respect formed between the unlikely pair. Remington genuinely hoped they could have a proper duel under better conditions next time, and Theo felt the same way. Everyone watched in shock as Theo got acknowledged by one of the four hounds. They were all thinking the young master really was built different. That duel with Remington shot his quest progress straight up to 35%, a massive jump all things considered. Evelyn sighed in relief from the sidelines. This couldn't have ended more perfectly. Thanks to Remington's display of power, Theo finally had a real gauge of just how strong the hounds were. Even though he'd become way stronger than his past self through quests, talents, and secret manuals, crossing blades with the White Lion reminded him that he was still lacking in a lot of areas. It sucked that the duel ended early because of his condition, but he still gained a ton from that short exchange. His luck shot up by 10 points, and his reputation improved dramatically. As for the quest, he still had a long way to go, so he'd need to actively look for other ways to finish it. He needed to set up a bigger stage to win more approval. Remington then confessed he didn't come just for a simple duel. He actually wanted to deliver an important letter to Theo. It was a formal invitation to the Scaled Dragon Society. Just hearing the name Scaled Dragon Society made all the young swordsmen's blood rush to their heads. It was an elite group with an extremely tough selection process, and here was Remington himself inviting the young master. Getting invited to the Scaled Dragon Society was a huge honor for any rising star. Theo modestly asked if it would really be okay for him to join the club. The White Lion quickly assured him that he was more than qualified. Besides, he insisted it wasn't even that serious of a group in the first place. Most of the prominent members just saw it as a chill social club for peers waiting for the upcoming awakening ceremony. Theo couldn't tell if Remington had any hidden motives with the invite, but he knew the Scaled Dragon Society was currently centered around his half-brother, Axion. It was basically a gathering full of snakes who looked at him with contempt and ridicule. That made it the perfect spot for him to make big progress on his quest. Plus, it'd give him a chance to do some recon on Axion and the Chamilia Palace. Seeing no reason to turn it down, Theo took the invitation letter and formally thanked Remington for going out of his way. He promised he'd participate and step right into the den of his enemies. Remington happily shook his hand, glad to have pulled in another rising star. He also told Theo not to hesitate to ask him for anything. The meeting was in 2 weeks, so that was all the time he had to prepare and come up with a plan. Evelyn took a drag from her cigarette, looking a bit worried about her new disciple. Not long after, the news of Theo getting invited to the high society gathering reached the Rose Palace. His mom, Cecilia, burst into his room with a huge, excited smile on her face. He was just about to tell her himself, but that clearly wasn't necessary anymore. Cecilia had already brought the palace's whole grooming team to his room. Since this was the first time her son had been invited to something this big, she was naturally super pumped. It was a club that included Axion, the son of that cunning Amani, and other brilliant talents like Remington. The group even caught the attention of the council itself. Cecilia knew that everything from how Theo dressed to how he carried himself would be under close watch. She pulled out a tape measure and started taking his measurements. She was confident her boy would nail the etiquette, but attire and overall vibe were different matters. Luckily, this was one area of high society where Cecilia could personally help him. After all, she used to be a successful actress. She was just happy to be involved and to support her dear son. Theo knew his mother had always carried the weight of being a commoner concubine who gave birth to an illegitimate child. She felt guilty for giving him that shameful label, even though it wasn't her fault at all. In the cold Ragnar clan where strength was everything, he could only imagine how tough it must have been for her to have such a weak son in his past life. Cecilia might have been acting all excited and joyful, but deep down she was just a mom worried about her son's well-being. She pulled Theo into a tight hug and told him that his mother would always believe in him and that he could do anything. The warmth of her embrace melted the coldness in Theo's heart. He hugged her back with real love. This time around, he was determined to work his ass off so his mom wouldn't have to worry about him anymore. While she was thrilled about her son joining the Scaled Dragon Society, all Theo could think about was pulverizing that whole damn snake's nest. 2 weeks later, the night of the society banquet finally arrived. Remington personally came by the Rose Palace to pick Theo up in a fancy carriage. As soon as he saw the young man, he thought he was looking at a completely different person. Theo had ditched his usual training clothes and was now rocking some exquisite drip, all thanks to his mom and the palace staff. Instead of looking like a warrior, he looked more like a proper aristocrat. Remington commented on his new look, and Theo took it as a joke. But the White Lion wasn't joking. He was genuinely impressed by the young master's transformation. Theo had to admit his body had gone through a massive overhaul. He'd grown taller. His muscles had developed perfectly, and all of it came from just 2 weeks of hard, diligent training. During those 2 weeks, Remington surprisingly showed up every day to train with him, and they'd gotten pretty close now. He'd also gained a solid little following with Sybil and the others. Poor Evelyn ended up stuck teaching a whole battalion of Theo fanatics when she only signed up to teach the young master for a short while. It was a lively 2 weeks of training, to say the least. Even now, Theo was still recovering from dealing with so many overeager people. Today, he was heading to his first formal banquet. Remington assured him there was no need to be nervous, but the White Lion did give him one warning. He explained that his friend Axion could be pretty mischievous at times. It was actually Axion who suggested inviting Theo, saying he wanted to meet the new rising star. On top of that, this whole banquet had been prepared just for Theo's sake. Getting all this info definitely changed things. Not for the worse, though. It was actually better for Theo. He was already looking forward to getting insulted left and right. At the banquet hall, the Dark Tiger, Axion Ragnar, had already started sipping on expensive brews. He was quite excited to turn the imbecile of Ragnar into his new toy. The carriage pulled up in front of a lavish palace, signaling their arrival at the banquet venue. Remington and Theo stepped out. The young lord immediately scanned the place. He was about to enter the Humilia Palace, the home court of the scum who instigated Rhindone to mess with his growth. In his past life, they had devoured him, his mother, and the entire Rose Palace without mercy. His thoughts of vengeance were interrupted when Remington invited him to head inside. The lively Remington had received word that Axion would personally come greet them and should be waiting at the entrance by now. It was pretty obvious why that bastard Axion had invited him in the first place. The fool probably thought that since the imbecile of Ragnar was acting up, it was up to him to stop Theo's momentum. But the young master hadn't walked into the snake's nest without a plan either. He was going to make Axion understand exactly who he was trying to mess with. As they got closer to the palace, Theo suddenly stopped in his tracks. Something in the corner of his eye caught his attention. Up on a higher floor of the Chemilea Palace, the weird blue light of a system quest was calling to him. He was momentarily distracted by the possible quest inside the palace, so he didn't notice something rapidly descending toward him. Remington tried to save him from the unknown object, but it exploded into white smog before he could get close. Remington panicked and quickly called out to Theo. Thankfully, he was fine. It was just a sack of white flour aimed at him and launched from above. Remington was furious at the childish prank. Theo acknowledged that in his previous life, he wouldn't have been able to dodge it, and the outfit his mom painstakingly prepared would have been completely ruined. He thought Remington might have been in on the stunt, but that didn't seem to be the case. The White Lion was just as confused and pissed off at the unexpected situation. Welcoming him with flour must have been the best those dumbasses upstairs could come up with. The idiot who thought of something this immature was probably one of those smug nobles watching from the windows. A familiar voice parted the nobles and claimed it was just a little greeting between friends, a basic courtesy, if you will. Remington wasn't having any of it, though. He was genuinely angry. Axion finally showed his smug face and insisted he was just extending a fun greeting to his brother Theo. Our boy immediately used his observation skill to check out the Dark Tiger. His talents included madness, psychopathy, and overwhelming swordsmanship potential. He was clearly excited about finding a new toy to play with. Theo smiled and simply said, "Thanks," which confused the hell out of his psychopathic brother. He continued that with how welcoming Axion was being, he was naturally grateful and really looking forward to the party today. Axion's confusion quickly flipped to elation. This brother of his had really become fun since the last time they saw each other. Finally, Remington and Theo entered the banquet hall where every member of the promising noble society was gathered. It was an extremely private event, so only a select few were invited to wine, dine, and chat with their fellow talented peers. Everyone's attention was on today's special guest. They couldn't understand why Axion would invite a bum. Even if Theo was from a direct Ragnar bloodline, he was still widely known as the imbecile. Having that kind of trash in the Scaled Dragon Society was an unpleasant surprise for most of them. They had to admit, though, the drip was pretty damn cold. Most nobles knew Axion was just playing with his new toy. Since the trashy nobles didn't even bother lowering their voices, Remington apologized to Theo, saying these gatherings weren't usually this scandalous. Theo was just letting them talk all the shit they wanted. In fact, the more they badmouthed him, the better. That would make crushing them later so much sweeter. He also noticed the blue quest light was somewhere nearby. He was pretty sure it could be important, but he didn't have a natural way to approach it yet. Axion, the host of the party, descended the stairs and asked his brother if he was enjoying himself. Theo forced himself to stay calm and stick to his plan. He smiled and thanked Axion again for the invitation. Axion sarcastically apologized for the flower incident a few minutes ago, playfully admitting he might have gone a little overboard. Then he closed the distance between them in the blink of an eye, grabbed Theo's shoulders tightly, and pressed him to accept the apology in front of everyone. Remington wanted to step in, but Theo cut in and said Axion had nothing to apologize for. He insisted, using Axion's own words, that the prank was just a greeting between brothers. The psycho was at a loss for words. Theo was way too calm and composed to rattle. Axion laughed and patted Theo on the back like a proud older brother. He never knew the kid had this much spunk. He had changed a lot since they were little. Axion actually liked him more and more now. The nobles watched Theo smiling and going along with his brother's whim, even calling him Axions. They started throwing comments about his illegitimate lineage compared to the noble blood of Troon. Sure, they were half-brothers, but the nobles believed Theo and Axion were on completely different levels, even though they were both Ragnars. The Troven clan was the swordsmanship powerhouse of the East, while Theo's mom was just some random woman from nowhere. Theo smiled as he soaked up all the blatant insults they were hurling at him, letting it fuel the fire inside. One thing that confused the nobles was how close Remington was with the imbecile, so they started directing insults at him too, calling him an illegitimate son of the Narzio family. The White Lion had been on edge ever since they arrived at the banquet. Hearing these nobles bring up that forbidden topic almost made him snap right there. Theo figured that in just a few seconds, Remington might steal his spotlight. He wanted to listen to a few more insults, but that wasn't going to work now. Before Axion could drag him upstairs, Theo paused. Since he had just arrived, he said he should greet his new friends first. He walked over to the banquet table where the snickering nobles were gathered. All eyes were locked on the imbecile of Ragnar. Theo quietly picked up a bottle of wine from the table. He approached the noble who was running his mouth about Remington's lineage and motioned to fill his glass. The noble smirked smugly and asked if he'd said something wrong. Theo shifted his grip on the wine bottle and smashed it straight on Blondie's head without mercy. Remington and even the psychotic Axion were shocked by the sudden move. Blondie grabbed his head in agony as blood stained his piss-colored hair. Theo stood over him, still holding the bloody, broken bottle. The bastard tried to sit up and curse at Theo for humiliating him in front of everyone. Before he could spew more arrogant, noble bullshit, Theo kicked him hard enough to break the guy's jaw. Theo's straightforward plan had finally kicked off as his eyes turned cold and crazy. He said he was just giving Blondie a little greeting, only to get a hurtful response back. The other nobles froze in place, scared and confused as hell. Meanwhile, Theo's quest progress shot up to 43%. Remington had trained with the young lord for 2 weeks and knew he wasn't some hot-headed thug. He figured Theo might be doing this for his sake. As Blondie kept bleeding on the palace floor, Theo declared that this was his version of a welcome greeting. He stepped over Blondie's arm, placed the noble's limp body on a platform, and slowly started applying pressure. Since he'd already sent his hellos, it was time for goodbyes. Blondie desperately begged him to wait and stop. Too bad for him. Theo stomped down hard and completely shattered the bastard's arm. A horrifying cracking sound echoed through the entire banquet hall. The nobles who had been running their mouths just minutes ago were now stunned and speechless at the ruthless punishment. That bone-breaking move pushed Theo's quest progress up to 58%. Blondie passed out from the shock and pain, drool staining the palace carpets. Theo tossed the limp body aside like the trash it was and asked the crowd if anybody else wanted to say hello. His intimidating vibe pushed the quest progress to 66%. Suddenly, knights who had been hiding in the shadows stepped out and surrounded Theo from all sides. They drew their blades and focused on taking out the threat right in front of them. 4 swords surrounded Theo, trapping him in place. The knights wanted payback for the sin of hurting their young master. They declared that the punishment for such a vile act had to be death. Theo smiled. His plan was getting better and better. He asked the knights, "Who the hell did I just trash?" They answered that Blondie was the 3rd young master of the Hanavi clan, young master Ian Hanavi. Theo was amused by their confident reply. The Hanavi clan was one of the 6 snow clans that supported Ragnar. He knew the bodyguard knights of these spoiled nobles wouldn't just sit back and watch. They always looked down on the imbecile whenever he started acting up. So Theo asked them what the problem was if he roughed up their young master. With deep pride in his voice, he asked if the dogs of one of Ragnar's bannerman clans really dared to demand his death. Could they actually take responsibility for threatening Kyle Ragnar's bloodline? He wasn't one to tolerate disrespect, after all. The knights felt their grip on their swords loosen as soon as they heard Theo's words. Their anger over seeing their young master get wrecked was quickly replaced by the deep-rooted fear they had for the Ragnar clan. On top of that, the oppressive aura the young man was giving off was suffocating them. This was not the imbecile of Ragnar they knew and loved making fun of. Now that they thought about it, Theo also had the right of succession as direct Ragnar blood. Plus, Ragnar was the Lord of the North, the overseer who ruled over the 6 snow clans. Declaring death on the blood of the dragon wasn't something any sane person should do. It was a sin that could get an entire insignificant snow clan wiped out without anyone batting an eye. That protection and prestige hadn't really applied to Theo for a long time because he used to be a useless descendant, so most people forgot. But that shit wasn't gonna fly anymore. All 4 knights knew they had made a massive blunder and needed to apologize immediately, but Theo had already given the kill order to a mysterious presence lurking nearby. A swift glint of a blade flashed so fast it blinded everyone. The next thing they knew, 4 severed heads were already flying through the air. Night blood stained the palace floor. Theo stood calm as the eye of a storm, while the blood of his enemies swirled around him. The mysterious figure he'd ordered to slaughter the knights landed gracefully on the carpet. It was none other than his master, Evelyn Noreviville herself. With more blood spilling everywhere, the arrogant nobles finally felt the real threat hanging over their heads. This wasn't a joke anymore. Theo's quest to ditch the imbecile of Ragnar title had jumped to 70% completion. Axion had no choice but to watch as his own banquet turned into Theo's show of force and dominance. Evelyn looked at her disciple and asked when he realized she was tailing him. Well, it was pretty obvious. He didn't exactly know why she followed him all the way to the Chamilia Palace, but thanks to her, Theo could turn the tables on these morons without any worries. As the crowd stood stunned into silence, they seemed to be waiting for Theo's next move. The night before the banquet, Commander Julius had paid Evelyn a secret visit. He came to rag on her about refusing to take more disciples, yet training her new student diligently every single day. Evelyn must have gotten used to this brute sneaking into her quarters because she didn't even bother entertaining his games. Recently, Julius's only joy in life had been tormenting his former comrade, including raiding her expensive wine stash for his own enjoyment. Tonight, Commander Julius really wanted to know what Evelyn saw in the kid. She knew there was no way she was prying that wine bottle out of the brute's hand, so she answered that Theo was simply beyond expectations. With his attitude toward training and his talent, he was truly one of the best she had ever taught. And considering that even Axion had passed through her hands, that was a pretty bold claim. Evelyn didn't mince her words. Based on Theo's potential, she could confidently say he was already beyond even young Master Axion. She sincerely insisted she wasn't just blowing smoke. Well, Julius had always trusted her eye for talent. She had two eyes, after all, while he only had one. Julius figured a person couldn't change that drastically overnight, so the most reasonable explanation was that the kid had been hiding his strength all this time for some reason. Admittedly, it was weird to think someone would keep it hidden for so long and then suddenly start showing off. As a trainer, Evelyn believed that rushing your steps usually made you trip and fall, but what she saw in Theo felt different. It seemed like he was being chased by something invisible, pushing himself out of fear. That's also why she was worried about him attending this Scaled Dragon Society event. Julius finished off the bottle of wine and agreed that the Axion brat was definitely worth worrying about. He was also the one who suggested Evelyn should just follow the kid to be safe. Commander Julius had a gut feeling that something was going to go down at the banquet. It might not be exactly what Evelyn was worried about, but something was definitely happening. Being a Ragnar himself, he knew from first-hand experience that when hungry wolf cubs who crave blood gather, they start fighting to establish a hierarchy. The commander laid out a uniform on the table and urged Evelyn to try tempting Theo to join his unit again. Not just the kid, he wanted Evelyn back in the white armored dragon cavalry too. He refused to let her retire just because she couldn't ride a dragon anymore. She had to come back and take responsibility for what she started. Julius left Evelyn's quarters, thanking her for the delicious wine. She'd lost an expensive bottle, but she might have just regained her purpose. Back to the present. Inside the Chamilia Palace, Evelyn started piecing everything together. She figured Theo must have noticed her tailing him and orchestrated this whole situation on purpose. Maybe he joined the Scaled Dragon Society aiming for exactly this. Her worries didn't need to exist in the first place. She wondered at what point he had noticed her presence on the way to the palace. Theo had actually sensed his master discreetly following him the moment he got into the carriage. With his dragon heart, he could unleash his energy perception around him, basically acting like a sixth sense. Anyway, what mattered now was that the stage for his revenge was set. Theo turned to Evelyn and explained that most of the nobles in the banquet hall had shown blatant disrespect to a successor candidate of the Ragnar clan. He asked her what the punishment for such a horrid crime was. The guilty nobles almost fainted on the spot. They knew exactly what the punishment was. Evelyn, ever the stickler for the rules, stated that depending on clan laws, immediate execution of the guilty parties was completely enforceable. Theo smiled. He had set it up, and Evelyn perfectly finished it off. Acting like a magnanimous guy, Theo declared that the offenders were just kids who hadn't even gone through their awakening. He'd be cool with just chopping one arm off each of those criminals and calling the sin forgiven. Evelyn didn't waste a second. She turned into an unstoppable slicing machine and went straight for those bratty, panicking nobles from the Scaled Dragon Society. The second son of the Byron clan tried to dodge, but nope, right arm gone. The first son of the red and white mercenary corps screamed like hell as blood sprayed from his stump. Even the dainty arm of the fourth daughter from the Ceres Merchant Guild got the same treatment. The third son of the Clark clan tried to run, but outrunning Evelyn? Pretty much impossible. When the first daughter of the Howard clan got turned into a one-armed Stumpy, Theo's quest hit 79% completion. One of those pathetic nobles crawled toward Axion, or Axe if you were close to him, begging for help. Axe just repeated his brother's words. He couldn't step in. This was basically just another form of greeting. The crawling guy saw a flash of blade out of the corner of his eye and then slice. Arm gone clean. His blood almost got on Axion's clothes. While the first son of the parent family twisted and groaned in pain, Axe looked over at his old teacher. Evelyn just casually met his eyes and nodded. Axe never thought he'd run into his former trainer in the middle of a scene this damn grisly. Evelyn even gave him a little salute with her blade. Axiom checked out the bloodied banquet hall and realized Evelyn had only gone after the ones who'd made those outright comments about the bloodline. Theo had set it up so that even as a fellow successor candidate, Axiom didn't have the authority to stop the slaughter. It only took Evelyn a few minutes to chop the right arms off 14 people under Theo's orders. Sure, they could still haul their arms to a priest and get them reattached, but their lives as swordsmen? That was a whole different story. Everything went exactly as planned. Axion was way more interested in how Theo managed to get both Remington and Evelyn on his side. Theo Ragnar, the so-called imbecile of the Rose Palace, had turned into something seriously terrifying. The Psycho and Axion were both pretty damn happy about it. He really wanted to crush this brother under his foot. Once he'd finished what he came for, Theo called Evelyn and Remington and they headed out. They walked out of the palace slowly while the remaining nobles stared at Theo like they were scared shitless. The brothers locked eyes. No words needed. But right before they left, Theo grabbed Axion's arm. He squeezed hard enough to wrinkle his brother's suit. A second later, he let go, waved goodbye, and told Axion he'd had a ton of fun at this bloody banquet. The final tutorial quest to ditch the imbecile of Ragnar title was finally done. Axion was pissed. He wanted to make a move right then and there, but he knew it wouldn't be smart. The Psycho just stormed out of his own place, screaming Theo's name at the top of his lungs. With all the tutorial quests finished, nobody would dare call Theo the family idiot anymore. The tutorial was over, but his real revenge was only just getting started. His reward for completely flipping his public image was an experience elixir, a tonic that instantly bumps your level up by 5 if you're under level 30. News of the bloodshed spread fast to the other palaces. Anyone would be shocked as hell to hear that Axion's fancy-scaled dragon society got torn limb from limb, literally and figuratively. As for Theo, he was in full celebration mode after flexing on those nobles. His subordinates dragged him to a pub to party over his flashy, gory high society debut. Every single one of his followers showed up. Hell, even Evelyn stopped by for a few drinks. He couldn't help wondering how the Scaled Dragon Society was feeling after getting wrecked by the guy they all loved calling an imbecile. Inside the Camellia Palace, Emil Ragnar was sitting there in total disbelief. Not only had they handed the MC the perfect justification for what he did, but the guy had straight up chopped everyone's arms off right in front of Axion. Axion answered like it was no big deal, which just pissed her off even more because it made zero sense to her. She remembered warning him beforehand not to take this shit so lightly. She was disappointed as hell that they hadn't just tried pressuring Theo into submission. Instead, they'd given their boy complete free rein to go wild. Axion tried to defend himself, saying that once Theo got some recognition, it would be a lot harder to take over the Rose Palace, and told her not to worry. She wasn't having it. She told him to reflect on his actions and shut him down completely. She pointed out every mistake he'd made that almost ruined their whole plan. Axion finally decided to listen and just left. Emmy wondered out loud who the hell Axion took after to end up this obnoxious. Ed Trovan replied that Axion actually reminded him of her when she was younger. She wasn't in the mood for jokes, so he quickly apologized and assured her the whole incident might not be worth stressing over that much. He explained that the Rose Palace had been part of the clan head's harem, so getting ownership of it was always going to be tough. Even though it had fallen out of the clan leader's interest because it was where Rifra liked to gather, it still had the clan leader's support behind it. He laid out the plan. All they really needed was justification, and thankfully, since their boy Theo had caused total chaos at the Scaled Dragon Society meeting, he was slowly turning into the face of the Rose Palace. By using this whole incident as justification, they could suppress the MC through legal procedures. Amal was left speechless after hearing that. She started thinking about how the real reason she'd been scared of Theo getting stronger was because she feared his power and influence would just keep growing if the clan leaders started paying more attention to the Rose Palace. But now, by using Theo, who was getting stronger, she realized the Camellia Palace could shut him down through legal means, and the Rose Palace would have no choice but to bow to the Trovans. She actually started believing the plan might work and asked Ed how long it would take to get everything ready. The guy told her all the preparations were already done, and when she woke up tomorrow morning, she'd hear some really good news. He comforted her, saying she could go enjoy a bath and sleep well, and even mentioned he'd prepared an aromatic candle for her from the South Akran volcanic region. Amal decided to trust her elder brother and showed him some real gratitude. Meanwhile, back in the tavern, Remington was going on about how shocked he was and how he never knew Theo cared that much about him. Our boy had no idea what the hell he was talking about and found it pretty funny watching him act all drunk when he'd only been drinking orange juice. Remington said that even though Theo had been getting insulted himself, he didn't hesitate for a second and stepped right up for his friend. The moment people started insulting Remington, he'd felt embarrassed as hell and was kicking himself for not doing anything. Remington looked at the MC and felt pretty damn surprised. Theo had put up with all those years of everyone looking down on him and treating him like some untalented, useless kid, and he still never gave up. He just kept getting stronger. Even against people he had zero chance of beating, he showed that crazy willpower and decided to fight the Camellia Palace, the one place nobody ever dares to mess with. Remington realized Theo had the guts to swing his sword without hesitating for a second, and he'd done it all for him. The guy started getting all teary-eyed. Theo immediately clocked that Remington had completely misunderstood the whole situation. Remington stood up and told the MC that even though his clan had given him orders, he wanted to go a different way. He said he wanted to follow Theo. The people watching the two of them started cheering and calling the MC and his friend amazing. Theo tried to clear up the misunderstanding, but Evelyn telepathically told him to just let his friend have it. He glanced over at her and she added that it wasn't a bad misunderstanding at all. Everyone probably just wanted to get along with their boy. Hearing that, Theo cracked a little smile, but deep down he knew he wasn't anything special. All his power came from the status window. He checked his own stats and realized everything he'd gained was thanks to that thing. At first, he thought it was just some leftover piece of his own regrets, but looking at how detailed it was, he figured it had to be something else entirely. He got this vague sense of déjà vu, but decided not to overthink it since it was clearly helping him get better. After the Scaled Dragon Society mess was over, the MC noticed his level had gone up. Every time he leveled, the system handed him points he could use to boost his stats. Theo understood he could raise his abilities however the hell he wanted, and for a second he actually felt a little scared of the shiny future a guy with this much potential could create. Evelyn caught that evil little smile of his and looked worried. Theo decided the first thing he needed to do was get ready for the Camellia Palace's counterattack. He asked Remington if he was willing to help with something. His friend immediately said he could ask for anything. Remington was a bit surprised to hear Theo call him Remy so casually like that. Theo pulled something out, handed it over, and told Remy that the war for the throne between him and Axion was about to start. He needed help getting prepared for when that time came. Remy went quiet, remembering that in his past life he'd become the clan head of Narcio and built the clan's forces up strong enough to actually challenge the Ragnars. The MC realized just how valuable this chance was to pull Remy over to his side. He gave Remington a piece of paper, and the guy promised that since he'd already sworn loyalty, he'd do everything in his power to help. Theo thanked him. Then out of nowhere, someone barged into the tavern screaming Theo's name. Everyone froze as a bunch of knights stormed in and announced that under the sword of law, Theo was under arrest for assault, threat, and intimidation. Evelyn called it complete bullshit, but their boy told her to calm down and stepped forward to check the arrest warrant. He saw it was the real deal. The ink hadn't even dried yet, which meant his enemies had been in a serious rush. Theo decided to go quietly. They slapped the handcuffs on him right away. As they hauled him off, he just smiled at his friends because he trusted them to handle everything while he was gone. Remington and Evelyn were completely shocked. Remy looked down at the paper Theo had just given him. The news of Theo getting arrested hit the Rose Palace, and Theo's mom, Cecilia, was completely stunned when she heard they were taking her son to the tribunal. She just dropped to her knees in shock. Her servant got all worried, but she waved him off and said she was fine, then asked why the hell they took her son away. He told her it was because of the Scaled Dragon Society mess. They were accusing him of inciting a rebellion. She was surprised and asked if that meant he was going to trial. The servant figured Theo wouldn't get out of this one easily since he'd basically destroyed the Scaled Dragon Society. Cecilia never expected that invitation to turn into such a huge mess, but she still believed her son would get through it somehow. That was just the kind of kid he was. She quietly wished he'd come back safe. Meanwhile, inside the carriage taking the MC to the tribunal, they finally arrived. He remembered it had been a while since he'd last seen this place. Since he'd completely obliterated the Scaled Dragon Society, he knew he wasn't getting some light slap on the wrist. He was probably looking at a full trial, and they'd definitely start questioning whether he even deserved to be a successor. The knights ordered him to get out. As he walked, he realized his enemies wanted to crush him completely, but he just smiled because everything was going exactly the way he'd planned. The knights announced that the prisoner Theo had been escorted, and they got the okay to bring him inside. The MC thought to himself that if he was going to pull out everything he'd prepared so far, he might as well do it on a stage this big. He stood in front of some seriously impressive people and felt a little anxious seeing them all gathered in one room. There was the demon dragon captain of the White Armored Dragon Cavalry, Julius Ragnar, and 4 of the 9 dragons who protected Ragnar, including Skyragon Ed Trovan. The MC admitted that in his previous life he would have been completely overwhelmed right about now. He also spotted the sword dragon lady of the Plum Blossom Palace, Osa Ragnar, and the elder dragon head counselor, Wolfgang Ragnar. Wolfgang looked at him, and the MC remembered it had been a while. He definitely hadn't expected to see the old man here. He knew Wolfgang was big on bloodlines, so a half-blooded, illegitimate kid like him probably seemed completely disgusting, and Wolfgang wasn't even trying to hide it. The man asked if Theo was aware he'd been summoned to answer for his crimes. Then he kept going. The Byron clan, the Ceres Merchant Guild, the Red and White Mercenary Corps, even the Hanavi clan, all of them were cutting ties with the main family because of Theo's foolish actions. Wolfgang got pissed, called him a bastard, and demanded to know if he could even handle the damage he'd caused. He made it crystal clear that Theo was going to be held accountable for dragging Ragnar's honor through the mud. Theo just agreed with him and admitted he'd been way too careless. Honestly, he should have cut off their heads instead of just their limbs. Everyone in the room went dead silent in shock, but the MC kept talking. He said all those other clans were their subjects. The Lord had given them land and honor, and in return the subjects were supposed to offer their loyalty and their lives to the Ragnar. That was the way of chivalry, and even knowing that, they'd still defied their lord. The MC showed some real frustration and said that if he'd known how insolent those assholes were being, he would have just cut their heads off instead. He told Wolfgang they should be punished properly to restore the principles of chivalry. He couldn't just sit there and watch the honor Ragnar had maintained for centuries get trampled on like that. Everyone went completely speechless. Julius called their boy impressive and figured he'd probably just get a normal punishment after that justification. Wolfgang thought the MC was straight up mocking them with all that fancy talk, but Osa Ragnar actually understood where he was coming from and admitted Theo was right. Wolfgang looked surprised as hell that she was taking his side. Osa explained that Ragnar was strong, sure, but it wasn't truly great yet. They still needed to listen to the voices of their vassals and knights. Otherwise, the whole clan would eventually fall, because you can't rule the world with pure power alone. Wolfgang got what she was saying and decided to keep it in mind. The MC noticed that the first wife of the clan head, the best swordsman in the north, was actually taking his side and didn't seem hostile at all. He was pretty surprised by that and couldn't figure out why she was doing it. Osa hoped their boy understood that the punishment he was about to get was justified. He asked what the punishment even was, and Wolfgang told him he'd get 3 months of probation. Theo said he still wanted to participate in the ceremony, which immediately pissed Wolfgang off. He thought the kid was talking back, but Osa decided to take his words into consideration and allowed him to join next year's awakening ceremony. Ed figured it had already been decided that the kids Theo had injured would be participating next year anyway. Thanks to the demon dragon's interference, their boy got a much lighter punishment than expected. Ed was pretty satisfied with how his plans were turning out. He knew delaying the awakening ceremony would bring dishonor to the Ragnars, and since the MC was the one representing the Rose Palace, forcing him to carry that dishonor would let the Camellia Palace finally take over the Rose Palace. He started smiling to himself, thinking that once his plan was fully in motion, their boy wouldn't be able to do a damn thing about it, and would have no choice but to accept defeat. Ed was sure that if Theo tried to appeal, he'd get killed, but he also believed the kid wasn't that stupid. Then the MC announced that he wanted to appeal. That surprised not just Ed, but everyone else in the room. Ed tried hard not to smile as he called the MC a huge fool whose arrogance had zero limits. He looked happy as hell that things were suddenly getting even easier for him. Julius asked if their boy even understood what it meant to appeal. Theo said he did, and he knew this wasn't something that could be brushed off with just 3 months of probation. Sure, the demon dragon had clearly pulled some strings, but he was still going to follow his own plan. He told them that in the strong and proud Ragnar clan, appealing meant war. Theo made it clear he wasn't planning on taking even a light slap on the wrist. In the end, only the strong got to speak the truth. He even said he should be rewarded for what he'd done, which left the entire room speechless. Meanwhile, at the hidden northern branch of the series Merchant Guild, the whole place was engulfed in flames. Evelyn was busy finishing off the last guy still standing. Remington realized this was exactly where they'd been hiding, just like the MC had said. After they wrecked the place, Remy and Evelyn found something. Back at the trial, Ed's eyes lit up with pure joy as he thought the Trovan Camellia Palace was basically finished. As the MC stood there in front of all those important figures, Wolfgang asked if he really wanted to turn an issue that could be easily resolved by waiting 3 months into a full-blown war. Wolfgang called it pure arrogance and asked if their boy really thought he could face the forces of 15 clans all by himself. Theo said this was something he had to handle, especially since the power gap was so damn huge. He figured appeals through proxy battles were a pretty normal thing around here. The MC understood that appealing meant settling the winner and loser through a fight, but if an all-out war was completely impossible because of how lopsided the power difference was, each side could send a representative and decide everything with a one-on-one sword battle. That was how a proxy battle worked, which meant their boy would be representing himself. There was a high chance the plaintiff's representative would be Axion. Julius could already see that if things kept going this way, the MC was pretty much guaranteed to lose. He asked if Theo actually had a plan, and figured that if their boy was counting on someone stepping up to fight for him, he was going to be disappointed as hell. Theo requested a proxy battle in 1 week, just like the rules said. Ed thought he could see right through the kid's plan. He figured Theo was hoping to get Julius or Evelyn as his representative, but nobody was going to agree to that, so he'd end up having to fight himself. Ed decided he'd send Axion as his representative and make the MC learn his place by finishing him off for good. Ed was about to announce his representative when suddenly they all heard someone and went completely speechless. A man walked in and praised Theo's clever plans, noting that their boy had changed a lot since the last time he'd seen him. It was the clan head himself, Kyle Ragnar. The second he stepped into the trial room, everyone dropped to their knees to show respect. The MC did the same and greeted the incarnation of the great dragon god. Out of nowhere, the system window popped up, telling him to complete a new quest, take over the Camellia Palace and uncover its hidden secrets. He noticed this was his first real quest after the tutorial and wondered if it had anything to do with that blue light he'd seen earlier. The MC realized he'd completely forgotten about it with everything going on lately, but he remembered there had been something there. He stopped overthinking and decided to focus on the present while facing his father. He needed to handle this situation first, because the king himself showing up was a massive variable that could mess up his whole plan. The MC asked why his father was here. Kyle told him to stand up. He said he'd heard about the whole situation and understood that his son was trying to appeal through a proxy battle. Theo confirmed it. His father said he could see it would be tough for Theo to fight the battle himself and asked who he was planning to choose as his representative. Their boy realized his father was testing him. He answered that there was no one who could stand in his place, so of course he was planning to step up himself and be his own representative. His father believed he'd lose, but Theo said he shouldn't jump to that conclusion without even letting him try. The MC was determined to face every challenge head on and not bend to anyone unless he had no other choice. After hearing all that, the king burst out laughing and asked the rest of the people in the trial if they'd heard what his son just said. The king was impressed that their boy refused to lower himself for anyone. That was the best way to describe what it meant to be a Ragnar. He praised his son for having such an amazing attitude. Their boy felt pretty damn grateful and started smiling because everything was still going exactly according to his plan. He remembered the proxy battle was just bait. Since he didn't even have to fight, it felt pretty damn amazing being able to say all that without holding back. He thought about the job he'd asked Remy and Evelyn to handle and knew they'd get him the proof of the Camellia Palace's treasonous conspiracy. That would make his victory absolute without him swinging a single sword. The king decided to give his son a shot. As the master of Ragnar, Kyle said he wanted to test a single strike against their boy. Theo was shocked when his father told him to forget about the trial. If the MC could endure just one blow, every charge would be cleared with zero punishment. The king told Theo to come on out. Ed immediately started shouting, trying to object. He realized that testing a single strike against their boy meant the king was basically approving of him, and if by some crazy chance Theo managed to endure that strike, he'd walk away with the clan head's personal approval. Ed was sure the MC couldn't handle it, but just in case he somehow did, Ed decided he had to step in and stop their boy from looking good in the king's eyes. He started going on about how the vassals and bannermen had dared to talk shit about the clan leader's son's blood, then tried bringing up the rules of the proxy battle. Kyle Ragnar just told him to shut the hell up and made it clear that if a vassal dared speak against the Ragnars, they should simply get rid of him. Ed had no choice but to back down. Kyle asked if Julius had anything to say, since he'd been giggling for a while. The demon dragon said he was just surprised to see the king take an interest in something after such a long time. Kyle got straight to the point and asked his son if he was willing to do it. Their boy understood things had taken a huge turn. He hadn't seen this coming at all, but he still smiled and decided to accept the challenge. The MC spoke up and told the clan leader this felt a bit too heavy for him. It was kind of absurd comparing a single strike from the clan leader himself to a proxy war against a bunch of vassals and bannermen. The king asked if he was trying to refuse. Theo said no, he just wanted a fair trade since the trial had gotten a lot stricter. With a cheeky smile, he demanded that his compensation should go up too. Kyle asked what he wanted. The MC turned and looked straight at Ed, then said he wanted something like the Camellia Palace. Ed was left completely speechless. He got frustrated as hell, and Wolfgang called it pure madness to propose a deal like that with the clan leader himself. He thought someone needed to put this bastard in his place, because agreements only worked when both sides were on equal footing. Wolfgang was sure the MC would fail because of his arrogance, but to his surprise, the clan leader actually agreed. Kyle said that if the MC was aiming to become the successor, he needed to be at least this courageous and bold. The clan leader asked if the Sky Dragon had any objections. The man just assured him that everything belonged to his Lord Kyle, so he wouldn't dare comment on the decision. The Lord was happy to hear that and ordered them to quickly prepare a stage. He wanted to test his son himself. Theo got a little hesitant. After a while, he stood face to face with his father, Kyle Ragnar, while the rest of the vassals hung back on the sidelines watching. Ed was completely losing it because the trap he'd set to catch the MC had somehow turned into a stage that was totally favoring their boy. Ed kept telling himself not to get anxious. Even if Theo had gotten stronger, there was no way in hell he could withstand even a single strike from the clan leader. That was something not even high-ranking swordsmen could pull off easily. Ed was sure Theo was about to die right here, but their boy saw right through his plans and felt confident he wouldn't die, thanks to the tutorial reward he'd gotten. The king noticed something different about his son and asked if he'd secretly downed an elixir without anyone knowing. He figured even an elixir shouldn't have changed him this much, but decided he didn't really care how the MC had gotten so strong. Their boy realized his father had seen through him way too easily. Not even the 9 dragons had noticed he'd taken an elixir. The king asked if he was warmed up. Theo said he was, and his father chuckled that normally he'd use his great sword, but since their boy didn't even know how to use mana yet, he was going easy on him with a rusty steel sword instead. The clan leader asked if he had any objections. Theo said he didn't. His father got serious and decided it was time to start. An immense aura started pouring out everywhere as the clan leader stepped forward, making their boy a little anxious. Theo could feel the insane pressure his father was putting out with nothing but pure fighting spirit. The clan leader actually praised him, surprised that his son was still standing. Theo stayed confident. His strength had almost tripled thanks to the reward he'd gotten for clearing the tutorial, the experience elixir. He'd gained 5 whole levels from it and dumped every single stat point into strength. With that kind of power, he finally felt true freedom, stepping out of the realm of the weak and into the realm of the extraordinary. He was sure he could at least survive 1 strike from his father. When the clan leader threw his attack, everyone went completely silent. Ed was already convinced the MC was done for. Their boy poured every bit of focus into defending and managed to see the attack coming. A huge red beam of light smashed into the ground and completely wrecked the stage. When the smoke finally cleared, the clan leader was smiling. He'd finally found a decent son. Their MC was still standing, and the whole room was left in total shock. Theo had proven his innocence through pure will and determination. After he successfully survived the strike, the trial was over. The system notified him that the sudden quest, Single Strike from Kyle Ragnar, had been successfully completed. Theo received an inventory and a mysterious blue key as rewards for what he'd pulled off. Sometime later, their boy woke up, completely confused about where the hell he was. His mother Cecilia was so happy to see him open his eyes. She told him he'd fainted while still standing. She started crying while holding his hand, talking about how terrified she'd been when she found out the clan leader himself had challenged him. She got all worried and asked if he had any more injuries, promising she'd call a physician right away if anything was fractured or dislocated. Theo told her he was fine, but he still had no idea where they were. Julius walked in and explained that by the clan leader's orders, the Lady of Camellia Palace, Axion, and the Director of Intelligence had all been forced to vacate. Theo lit up when he realized they were inside the Camellia Palace itself. The system updated him on the situation and showed that he just needed to uncover the secret now. Meanwhile, out in the Camellia Palace's garden, Emma was making a huge fuss because she couldn't understand why she was being forced out of her own property. The servants tried to calm her down and begged her not to cause a scene. Watching all of this from the side, Ed gave Axion a cold order: kill Theo Ragnar. Axion started sharing his plan for the awakening ceremony, but Ed cut him off and told him to just chop Theo's head off and finish the bastard for good. Axion looked at Ed's eyes and saw them burning with pure, intense desire for revenge. Once everything settled down at the Camellia Palace, their boy realized that even though a bunch of stuff had gone against his original plan, he'd still ended up with way better results than he'd expected. He'd managed to get the Camellia Palace without even using his trump card, and on top of that, he'd picked up another authority. He activated the inventory skill and pulled an item out of it. The MC took a bite of the apple and wondered how the hell this kind of thing was even possible, but he had to admit it was damn useful. Then he pulled out the blue key he'd gotten recently and figured it had to be connected to something important. He focused on a door and the keyhole suddenly lit up. Theo decided to unlock it. When he opened the door, he was surprised to find a deep tunnel stretching out in front of him. The system told him he'd discovered a dungeon for the first time, and as a reward, any experience he gained inside would be doubled. Seeing a cave hidden inside the Camellia Palace, he figured it was probably another quest of some kind. He decided to clear it because there was no way he was missing out on free experience. Before heading in, though, he remembered he shouldn't just charge in unprepared. He went and got ready. A little while later, he came back with his inventory stuffed full of weapons and decided to check out the dungeon. As he walked forward, he noticed a huge wolf staring right at him. The thing was big enough to be a demonic beast. The wolf monster lunged at him, but their boy managed to block it with a shield. He could tell the wolf was seriously strong, but he quickly shoved it back, determined not to lose a pure strength contest. The wolf charged at him again while howling. Theo slashed at it with his sword, but the attack barely scratched it. He realized the hide was way too thick and the wolf was crazy fast. Half-hearted attacks weren't going to cut it. The MC recognized this was no ordinary wolf. It might even be as strong as a real demonic beast. He admitted it wasn't going to be easy to take down. Suddenly, the monster came at him with its claws. He wished he could copy that ray of light he'd seen when his father threw that single strike. He called it amazing and tried to use the pure white arc on the wolf, but he completely failed to copy his dad's move. He accepted that it wasn't going to be that easy. A single strike was just a nice way of saying a hit that brought certain death. He finally understood that the key to mimicking his father's attack was putting every single bit of his strength into one sword swing. He ditched the shield and started thinking about improving his sword skills, especially those secret sword arts that relied on speed, the ones Evelyn had taught him. He charged the wolf and stabbed it right in the eye. The monster screamed and stumbled back. Their boy realized his plan was working and went in for another attack, feeling sure he was going to win. 2 months later, at the training grounds, someone noticed the number of people showing up kept growing. Cybele agreed and said they probably needed to change the training grounds. A rumor had been spreading lately that the clan leader himself had taught young Master Theo a single strike. Now a ton of people wanted to spar with him. While Cybele was talking about their boy, someone came up from behind and called him a lackey. It was Henry Morris from the Plum Blossom Palace. He asked when their incredible young master was finally going to show up. It had already been 2 months. Morris sounded disappointed and said he'd assumed the young master never missed a single day of training. He called the MC a coward and figured he'd run off after that fake story of his spread too far. Cybele got pissed, but Henry kept going. He thought the whole rumor might be a total lie since there weren't any witnesses. He assumed their boy had just exaggerated everything. Henry even said the whole Scaled Dragon Society got destroyed thing was probably fake news too. That was the last straw for Cybele. He punched Henry with everything he had and completely wrecked his face. Another guy from the Plum Palace got angry and called Cybele a dropout, but everyone on the training ground started glaring at him hard. Cybele shot back that the guy had a face only a mother could love and made it clear nobody could compare to their young master. Odd was surprised to hear his friend call someone ugly when Cybele's own face wasn't exactly winning any prizes. Cybele explained he'd already been annoyed watching the Plum Palace guys keep showing up just to cause trouble, and he wasn't about to let anyone disrespect their young master Theo. Cybele and his comrades pulled out their swords and basically declared war on the Plum Palace guys. The other side got fired up too and decided they were going to put those dropout losers in their place. But right as they were about to clash, someone stepped between them and froze every single weapon solid. Everyone froze in surprise. Cybele recognized the guy. It was Ray Ragnar from the Four Hounds. Then someone else joined in, laughing like crazy. It was Hocus Lanka, also one of the Four Hounds. Cybele was shocked to see 2 members of the Four Hounds show up out of nowhere. Hocus noticed someone was missing and asked one of the Plum Palace guys where the Luster Tiger was. The guy looked completely confused. Hocus got even more fired up and demanded to know if everyone was deaf. He was asking for the master of the training ground. Hocus announced that he'd come here to challenge their MC, Theo Ragnar. Meanwhile, back inside the dungeon, the MC was reaching his absolute limit. His sword finally shattered. The system notified him that he'd leveled up. Suddenly, a bunch of system windows started popping up, showing his stats climbing and that he'd hunted 170 demonic beasts. Their boy sat down on the pile of monster corpses he'd taken out. The system told him only 1 monster was left. Theo downed a healing potion to get his strength back and remembered how many times he'd almost died in here. The potions had always saved his ass. At first, it had been a real struggle to take these things down, but as he leveled up, everything got a lot easier. He was still surprised at how fast time had flown by. He'd already spent 2 whole months inside this dungeon. The system confirmed only 1 demonic beast remained. He realized it had to be a boss monster when he spotted some stairs. The MC started walking and stepped onto the 5th floor. He looked at his broken sword and knew it was useless now, so he opened his inventory and pulled out another one. He found only a single sword left and realized it was his last one. Their boy remembered this sword was a birthday present from his mother. He started thinking about his past life. Back then, he'd had a ton of friction with his mom leading up to the awakening ceremony, so he'd just tossed the sword into a corner of his room and let it gather dust. He looked at the ceremonial sword now and realized it was actually a really good one, forged from white snow steel. Theo went quiet as the memories hit him. In that past life, his mother had barged into his room, wishing him a happy birthday, saying she'd been waiting until midnight so she could shower him with gifts. But he'd gotten angry at her and told her he didn't want to waste time on birthday presents because the ceremony was right around the corner. He was expecting way better from his mom and made it pretty damn clear that no fancy gear would ever change his bloodline. He remembers telling her to just leave him alone, but he decides he's not going to repeat any of the dumb mistakes from his previous life. Our boy finds the boss room and the system warns him to be careful because a strong demonic beast is about to show up. Inside the boss room, Theo spots a dragon just taking a nap. He's relieved as hell when he realizes it's only a lesser drake. Theo starts wondering why the final boss of this quest is even draconic in the first place. The Ragnars are supposed to be descendants of dragons, right? Our boy thinks maybe it's just a coincidence, but he decides to focus on taking this boss monster down because there's no getting out of the dungeon without it. The system shows him the quest scenario and how many monsters are left. She questions if he can actually win this fight since he's still dealing with some kind of dragon. The MC starts locking in and decides to go for a single flash. He remembers practicing that move a ton against those wolves he fought earlier, and even though it might not be on the same level as his dad's dragon flash, he charges straight at the dragon, figuring if he pushes his dragon heart to the max, he should be able to land a serious hit. He drives his sword right through the monster's eye and successfully wounds it as the thing starts screaming in pain. Suddenly, it swings its tail at our boy, but he dodges it easily and feels kinda disappointed that his weak attack couldn't pierce all the way to its brain. The drake starts roaring and gets ready to kill our boy, but he can see the openings and confidently charges in, believing he might actually pull this off. The MC lands a few hits and decides to distract the monster first with some normal attacks so he can find its weak point. All of a sudden, the lesser drake starts screaming again, and fear just takes over the whole battlefield. Theo's body completely freezes up from the fear. Even though he can see the attack coming, he can't dodge it and has to block with his sword instead. He gets thrown back and smacks into the rock wall, realizing just how strong this boss monster really is. He admits he can't keep this up much longer and gets back up to attack the huge monster charging at him, hoping he can hit its weak spots for a quick win. Our boy already knows a dragon's weak point is those reverse scales, so he jumps onto the lesser drake's body while dodging every attack. He manages to pierce the reverse scales with his sword, and blood starts gushing out of the monster. He keeps hammering that same spot as it screams in pain. Our boy thinks his plan worked, but the lesser drake doesn't go down and totally surprises Theo. At the training grounds, Hulkus gets pissed at Ray and makes it clear he wants to fight the young master first. She calls him a loser and tells him to stay out of it, but he starts defending himself and says he only lost 3 years ago. He's been working his ass off every single day to improve, so 3 years should be more than enough to close that gap. Ray doesn't listen to a word he says and just calls him a loser again, which makes Hulkus even angrier. He decides they're gonna duel and says the winner gets a shot at fighting Theo Ragnar. He swings a huge weapon at her, but she stops the attack like it's nothing and doesn't even flinch. Sybil and Henry have no clue what's going on, but they get pretty scared watching the 4 Hounds members go at it. As they both move in to attack, Remington suddenly appears right between them and tells them to take their fight somewhere else because this is young Master Theo's domain. He makes it crystal clear he won't let anyone cause trouble for the master. Hulkus gets all happy seeing Remington and even says he'd love to fight him too. But Remington just asks Hulkus to actually listen to what he's saying. Suddenly, everyone feels this insane pressure, and Remington wonders where the hell this menacing killing intent is coming from. They all look back and see the MC walking into the training grounds. Remington is shocked to feel such overwhelming pressure and starts wondering what the hell happened during Theo's seclusion training. Ray and Hocus get super excited that young Master Theo has finally shown up. The RMC completely dominates the whole training ground with the skill Lesser Drake's Fear. Earlier, inside the dungeon, after the MC pierced through its reverse scales, the Lesser Drake finally died, and the system congratulated our boy on the hunt. The second he touched those reverse scales, the monster went completely crazy. Our boy thought he was done for, but after a few minutes the thing just wore itself out, cause those scales were definitely its weak point. The system notified him he'd gotten the Lesser Drake's tooth and claw. The tooth was an enhancement material for weapons, while the claw could make a weapon sharper. He decided to use his rewards to fix up the sword he already had, since he didn't want to lose a gift his mom gave him. The MC also got a skill called Lesser Drake's Fear, which totally surprised him. He checked the stats and realized it could inflict fear on anyone weaker than him. He was shocked to get a skill like that, because he thought only a few chosen people could use it. He's pretty happy he's finally getting a chance to try it out. While stuffing all his stuff back into his inventory, he wonders if the skill will even be useful in Ragnar since the place is already packed with powerful people. The Camellia Palace dungeon gets cleared, and our boy finally steps out after finishing the quest of uncovering the palace's secrets. For successfully clearing Scenario Quest 1, he gets a nest compass as his reward. He has no idea what it is and questions whether it'll even be useful in the next quest. Theo tosses it into his inventory and decides to head back to his room to rest first because he's completely wiped out. But suddenly, a maid rushes over to our boy and tells him there's an urgent matter he needs to deal with. She notices the wounds on his body, but he just brushes it off and asks what's going on. The maid informs him there's a brawl happening in Training Ground 4. Our boy heads straight there after hearing that. Dominating everyone with his new skill, Lesser Drake's Fear, he angrily tells them all to get the hell out because he needs some rest. The intense aura knocks a bunch of people unconscious, but Hocus gets excited seeing such overwhelming killing intent and charges at our boy without a second thought just to see who's stronger. Hocus swings his sword, but the MC easily overpowers him with a single swing, leaving everyone stunned. Hocus gets knocked back and can't believe his strike was deflected so easily. The MC is surprised by how much he's improved after the dungeon training, but Hocus doesn't back down. He's always been considered the weakest of the 4 hounds of the North because he's pretty dumb and never really rounds out his arsenal. Hocus attacks Theo again, challenging him to block it. Even though he's the weakest, Hocus has never once been outmatched when it comes to pure raw strength. But now the MC is surprised he can actually keep up with Hocus, and with one clean slash he counters him and takes him down. He feels amazing after leveling up so much, while Hocus starts coughing up blood, passes out, and hits the ground. Theo realizes he got a bit too careless and should have held back more, but he's glad he was facing Hocus. The guy's known for being tough as hell and can tank hits like that. The MC checks and sees Hocus only fainted. Cybele looks shocked, and everyone in the training ground starts cheering for the young master who just took down the Black Bear, one of the 4 hounds, with a single strike. Theo quickly assures them Hocus is still alive. Then his sword suddenly breaks too, which really disappoints our boy since it was a gift from his mom. Everyone keeps cheering and praising him for snapping his own sword in one hit. He has no idea why they're so happy about that. Meanwhile, watching all of this, Ray remembers one of her old memories. Back when she was a little kid, the MC found her one day and asked why the hell she was walking around in such freezing weather wearing barely anything. Theo gave her his own scarf, but she still looked freezing, so he decided to take her to his house and told her he'd bring her home once the snow finally stopped. After remembering all that, she starts smiling and walks away from the battleground. Remington is surprised to see her smiling like that. A little later at the Camellia Palace, our boy looks kinda embarrassed as the maids congratulate him on his new title, Luster Tiger. One of the maids is happy to see all his hard work finally paying off and tells him to keep it up and ride that momentum all the way to the awakening ceremony. She believes he can do it, and then suddenly his mother shows up and starts force-feeding him this new abalone dish. He tries to stop her, but she just keeps stuffing more food in his face while he begs her to chill. While eating, he thinks back to his past life and starts feeling really grateful. He tells his mom the food is actually super delicious, and that's when she notices the broken sword. She looks shocked, and the MC starts sweating nervously. He tells her it broke during training and starts apologizing because it was a precious birthday gift from her. Theo's mom gets pissed at the guy who swore it wouldn't break. It was supposedly made with white snow steel and ebony steel wood. He asks if she means the steel wood from the southern jungle. She says yeah, it's rare and really valuable stuff, and she's disappointed it turned out to be a lie. She figures if that guy had been telling the truth, the sword never would have broken so easily. The MC realizes just how precious those materials are and is surprised as hell because he had no idea it was that valuable. He wonders how his mom even found a sword like that. She decides she's going to go demand an explanation from the maker and force him to craft a better one this time, something perfect for her precious son. He tries to tell her it's fine and he can just use another sword, but she shuts that idea down. She says people are finally starting to see his real power, so he needs to be even more careful than before. And since the awakening ceremony is right around the corner, there's no way she's letting him show up carrying some shabby old sword. Theo feels happy seeing how much his mom cares about him, and then Cecilia says they should get going since they're done talking. The MC looks confused. She reveals they're heading to the best workshop in all of Wintera, the Basque Workshop. It's one of the top 3 manufacturing workshops in Wintera, and its fame comes from how massive it is, basically the size of a whole factory. But the most impressive thing about the place is its master. She's one of those rare people who falls into the special rank category, according to the intelligence agency, and she's a blacksmith with the title of Master Craftsman, something only 2 other Ragnar artisans have. The MC is shocked to see the elf of capitalism incarnate herself, the demon craftsman Kursinen. He never expected to meet a tycoon like her and wonders how the hell his mom even has connections with the demon craftsman. Cecilia angrily asks why her mother is still smoking. Hearing her call Kursinen mother, our boy is completely speechless. Kursinen tells Cecilia not to call her that since their relationship isn't exactly parent and child. On the day Cecilia decided to run away, Theo was always told his mom was an orphan with no family left in the world, so he's pretty surprised to find out she's actually the daughter of the high elf Kursinen. He suddenly realizes the reason he looks so damn handsome is because he's also a quarter elf. Kursinen asks why Cecilia decided to show up out of nowhere. Theo's mom just throws the sword at her and says it's a defective piece of junk. Kursinen doesn't buy it and gets pissed hearing her own daughter call a sword she forged herself defective. She pulls the sword out, sees it's broken, and goes quiet. Cecilia asks if that doesn't count as a defective product, and Kursinen has nothing to say. The high elf asks who the hell was swinging it. Cecilia tells her Theo is the one who used the sword. Kursinen looks over and asks if it's the kid standing behind her, and Cecilia tells her to watch her mouth because the MC is a genius who's going to reign over Ragnar one day. Theo introduces himself to the high elf and says he's grateful to finally meet the famous master of the Basque Workshop. Kursinen remembers him and praises Cecilia for raising such a solid kid. She asks if he's the only one who used the sword, and the MC says yeah. Cecilia still thinks the sword is defective, but Kursinen looks surprised and realizes this is going to be a long conversation, so she invites them inside. As they walk in, the MC asks if his mom is actually related to the demon craftsman. She says he got it right, and he gets curious whether Kursinen is her real mother. Cecilia tells him he wouldn't know because she never really talked about it, but even if it was only for a short time, Kursinen took her in as a foster mother. She explains that her mother falls in love with anything she finds beautiful, whether it's music, jewels, theater, or even people. That's the whole reason Kursinen took her in as a foster child. Ken tells them to cut the past talk, calling it pointless. Cecilia thinks she's full of it, and her son asks how she ended up getting out of this place in the first place. Ken reveals that Cecilia left because she wanted to marry the Ragnar clan's leader. Kursinen never expected her daughter to willingly go to such a miserable place and is surprised she survived this long. Cecilia says she just couldn't resist the manliness and handsomeness of the clan leader who loved her so much. Kursinen looks disappointed that even after running away from home, she came crawling back last year, begging her to forge a sword as a gift for Theo. Kursinen calls her shameless, but Cecilia gets annoyed that she's saying all this right in front of her son. The two of them start arguing, and the MC can't help smiling because he's never seen his mom talk like this before. He remembers that in his past life, he never bothered learning anything about his mother and was a pretty ungrateful son. He wonders if he was just too obsessed with the clan, and he notices that Kursanen actually cares a lot about his mom too. He can't help thinking why she never did anything in his past life. They finally reach their destination, and Kursanen says this is the room she lives in. Cecilia asks why the hell her mother dragged them all the way in here and demands she make the best damn sword possible for Theo to make up for the broken one. Kursanen suddenly tells Cecilia to wait outside, grabs Theo, and quickly shuts the door, leaving his mom stuck out there. Inside the room, Kursanen completely ignores Cecilia yelling for her and decides to cut straight to the point. She asks if the MC has the relic of the primordial dragon. Our boy looks confused and asks if she's talking about the ancestor of the guardian dragon that protects the clan. He mentions he's heard the legend about treasure being scattered all over Winterra for the descendants of the Ragnar clan. She makes it clear it's not just some legend and asks if he really doesn't have any relic on him. Kursanen starts tearing up and gets frustrated, wondering how the hell he managed to destroy her sword when she poured her heart and soul into making it. She refuses to believe the sword could break against anything except a relic, and asks if our boy has any idea how precious that sword was. He tries to apologize and remembers the sword got messed up while he was fighting a lesser drake. He doesn't understand a thing about relics, so she just gives up and decides to show him instead so he can get it faster. She brings out a casket that's completely locked up with chains and asks if he notices anything. The MC starts seeing a blue glow and wonders if it's another quest after realizing it's the exact same glow he saw on the dungeon door back at the palace. Kursanen says she can't see anything, but from the way he's acting, she can tell he noticed something. She starts dragging the casket over and tells him she's tried opening the sealed thing a bunch of times to get what's inside, but she always fails. She sets the shield casket down and brings up the primordial dragon's relic again. Kursanen tells him the story of how the primordial dragon pulled out one of its own fangs and forged a blade from it, the monster sword known as the White Moonlight Blade. She says if he can break the seal on the casket and pull it off, she'll hand him that sword. The MC looks a little confused, and she adds that if he fails to open it, he might straight up die in the process. She asks if he still wants to try, and the MC just starts smiling out of pure excitement. He makes it clear the sword is already his. The system shows that the next scenario for the quest is to be chosen by the primordial dragon's relic, the White Moonlight Blade. That blade belongs to the leader of Black Snow, one of the 9 dragons known as the Black Dragon. Barely anyone knows about the sword because everyone who's ever seen it or even talked about it has either died or gone missing. Our boy remembers a mysterious man who noticed him once and seemed surprised Theo could even see him. The MC ended up catching a glimpse of the sword's true form by pure coincidence and still doesn't get why the Black Dragon let him live. He's shocked to find out the Black Dragon's White Moonlight sword is right here and that it's an actual relic of the primordial dragon. He remembers running into the Black Dragon 4 years ago and realizes Kursanen already had the sword back then. She asks if he wants to open it, and the MC just smiles, determined to get that sword no matter what. He tells her it's his sword now, and while looking at the casket, he realizes it looks a lot like the Camellia Palace. He tries using the blue key to open it. Kursanen looks confused as our boy unlocks the casket and this weird light starts shining. Suddenly, she gets worried as our boy starts getting pulled inside by some mysterious black fog. The MC tries to free himself but fails and gets dragged into some weird, mysterious place. He opens his eyes and has no clue where the hell he is. Theo recognizes the Rose Palace, but everything's on fire. He doesn't get why he's seeing all this shit again. While watching his past memories play out, he realizes he completely forgot how weak he used to be. That's why he needs way more power, enough to take down Randon and crush the Camellia Palace. A griffin starts messing with his head and grabs our boy, ready to swallow him whole. But the MC snaps awake, grabs its beak, and catches it completely off guard. He realizes the monster's trying to take over his mind by using his own desire for power against him. That's when it clicks. This is why they call it a monster sword. The mysterious griffin calls him insolent and tries to break free. but the boy confidently tells it he's already conquered all the despair it's trying to throw at him a long time ago. He asks if the monster really thought he'd fall for its useless powers when he's already been through so many quests. The griffin looks confused, and our MC notices it looks totally different from the one in his memory. The monster keeps trying to free itself, but our boy doesn't let go. He remembers it used to be at least 10 meters tall, but right now they're basically the same height. He wonders if the griffin shrunk because it's been sealed for so long. In the end, he decides he doesn't give a damn and makes it clear the moonlight sword is his now, then tries to punch the griffin with a nasty look on his face. The monster starts trying to talk its way out of it. Meanwhile, back in Kursanen's room, Cecilia starts screaming when she sees her son knocked out cold. She tries to wake him up, but nothing works, and she breaks down crying, asking her mother why the hell her son is unconscious like this. Kursanen goes speechless as Cecilia cries and says she never asked for any of this. She just wanted a sword for her son. Kursonen notices there's some kind of monster energy linked straight into Theo's bloodstream, something she's never seen or even heard of before. She was hoping he'd be okay since he already had a relic. Cecilia tells her mother that if anything bad happens to her son, she will never forgive Kursonen for this. All of a sudden, the MC grabs the moonlight sword and a weird light starts forming around his chest. Cecilia gets worried and keeps trying to wake him. Theo finally opens his eyes. She hugs her son tight and starts crying, telling him she was so damn worried. He just tells her not to overthink it. He's completely fine. The system congratulates him on hunting a griffin and finishing the quest. As a reward, he becomes the official owner of the white moonlight sword. The MC figures he only survived because of pure luck. The griffin was easy to beat since it had just been unsealed, and none of its psychological attacks worked on him. The system notifies him that he's observed the monster energy of the white moonlight sword, so his magic power has shot up big time. His magic power goes past 200, and his body starts glowing. Our boy learns that his magic power has started gaining divinity and has reached the level of a high-ranking swordsman. He's a bit disappointed he can't use the new power right away and has to hold back until the awakening ceremony. Kersanen says how surprised she was and congratulates him on pulling it off. He asks if she's going to keep her promise, and she assures him that elves don't lie. He notices the sword is being all rebellious and wonders if it still hasn't acknowledged him as its master. He gets a little anxious, but the elf assures him the sword's just acting up after being trapped for 400 years. She says now that it's finally free, it wants to let out all that pent-up frustration. Kersanen suggests he take a full swing at the wall with everything he's got. He asks if that's really okay, but she starts mocking him, saying he's worrying for nothing, even if it is a legendary sword. A swing from an inexperienced brat who hasn't even had his awakening ceremony yet couldn't possibly damage the Basque workshop. That gets under his skin, so he decides to give it a shot. Our boy knows he can hide his dragon heart whenever he wants, so this is a perfect chance to test out the new legendary sword he just got. He walks over to the wall and tries pouring all his magic power into it. The MC excuses himself, pulls the cover off the legendary moonlight sword, and gets ready to swing. Kersanen watches him and starts looking worried. She tries to stop our boy, but he ends up using that single flash attack and completely wrecks the workshop's wall. Cecilia is stunned, while Kersanen's eyes fill with anxious tears looking at the destruction. Contrary to what she thought, my guy literally split the building wall in half with one swing, and he wasn't even trying to destroy it. Kersanen sinks into despair at yet another costly loss thanks to our boy, especially right after the last sword he broke. Even Theo thinks this is seriously overkill, and he's already running on empty because that sword drained every bit of his magic to pull off that crazy slash. Right then, Kin starts pouring some mana into him, dashing over so fast he didn't even notice her arrive. She's startled to see he really has zero control over his magic. Still, after looking at that massive crack in the 10-foot-thick wall, she's sure this kid is an absolute genius. She starts feeling kind of proud to have a grandson like him, and you can practically see the dollar signs lighting up in her eyes as her greedy mind starts cooking up ways to profit off our boy. She puts a hand on him and tells him she'll be his patron from now on. All he has to do is spread his wings and show the world what he can do. Yeah, she's basically using him as a walking, talking billboard for her workshop, and Theo can clearly see that glint in her eyes. He bluntly tells her he can see those dollar signs shining right back at him. As the night gets deeper, Theo and his mom get ready to leave the Bosk workshop. After their final goodbyes, they head out. We see the fangs she's holding. Turns out Theo gave them to her as wall repair money. She's thrilled to have loot from a Drake and figures he must have grabbed it while getting the relic. She's also feeling proud of her daughter for raising such an incredible son. Right then, someone shows up and greets her by her title of Demon Craftsman. Kursinen freezes for a second at the sound of that familiar voice. She turns around and asks why he's here, but this mysterious crow from Robber Ragnar just sits there with a red glint in his eyes and doesn't say a word, leaving us hanging. 5 days later, the day of the awakening ceremony finally arrives. As usual, Evelyn and Theo are in the middle of a sparring session. After trading a few blows, she can tell his swordplay has gotten stronger and faster overall. My guy just flashes a grin, saying he's really glad to hear that because he never thought someone like Evelyn would ever praise him. The onlookers, as usual, are sweating their balls off because they feel like total weak sauce next to Theo. It's been half a year since Theo started changing, and Evelyn is amazed he's already grown strong enough to push her back. If he awakens his magic today, it's basically going to be the birth of a monster. After they spar a bit more, she gives him props, saying he's done a great job and that he might even aim to become the valedictorian of the awakening ceremony. Her prayers are with him. Theo flashes a big smirk back at her, thanking her for the kind words. He says if he does become valedictorian, he'll mention her name during his speech in front of everyone. Of course, Evelyn gives him this worn-out look, wondering if that's even necessary. Meanwhile, his buddies come over, excitedly telling him to mention their names too. Theo can't help feeling a bit proud, thinking that being popular is such a drag, while Evelyn just gives him this creeped-out look, clearly thinking he's getting way too full of himself. The scene then shifts to the central headquarters where Theo makes his grand entrance, introducing himself to the guards as Theo Ragnar of Camellia Palace. Once inside, he notices the huge crowd. The awakening ceremony is the most important annual event for the Ragnar clan, so every participant is hoping to get good results. For the swordsmen of Ragnar, this is their first real chance to get acknowledged and honored. With the whole clan watching, including the clan head, Kyle Ragnar, the pressure is high. Even some big shots are here, like the 9 dragons and the former clan head from 2 generations ago, Hilda Ragnar. The more Theo looks at Hilda, the less she seems like someone who's 150 years old. Either way, he's relieved to see her attending again. The conductor then bangs a drum to grab everyone's attention. This guy is Vonor Ragnar, the judge of the ceremony and a Dragon Gate swordsman. He snaps everyone to attention and tells them it's time to begin the preliminary examination. The prelim is simple. Grab a sword from the ground and leave a mark on the steel wall up on the platform. He explains the wall is forged with a mix of white snow steel, so regular steel blades won't even scratch it. That changes if they channel their magic power into the attack. To help with that, he's handing out Soma to everyone. One single Soma pill gives the power of 10 years worth of magic, an elixir made to help open their mana halls. He tells them to swallow the Soma, focus on opening their mana hall in the Dantian, and only then will they be able to cut through the white snow steel wall. The depth of their cut will decide their results. Vonor calls out that from now on, the participants whose names he announces have to step forward, grab a Soma, and get on the platform. First up is Theo Ragnar. Come forth. Of course, my guy steps up right away. As he's taking the pill, he thinks back to how in his past life Axion was the valedictorian. He grabs a sword and walks toward the white wall, determined that this time won't be like the past. As he does, a system window pops up with Scenario Quest 3. Become the valedictorian of the awakening ceremony to clear the quest. We then cut to the 150-year-old Hilda, asking Kyle if this boy is the one he mentioned before. Kyle says yeah, and asks if he's caught her attention too. Hilda replies that she's definitely curious after hearing so much about this kid and wants to see for herself just how competent his descendant really is. My guy stretches his shoulder muscles while trying not to look nervous as hell. The judge, Vonor, promptly shows up and reminds him to swallow the Soma. Theo pops the pill into his mouth right away, thinking back to how in his past life he swallowed the soma but couldn't control the mana and seriously messed up his dantian. But this time, that shit isn't happening. The second he swallows it, he feels a massive surge of power and mana starts scattering all over the place. Vanor looks completely bewildered seeing this brat kick up a mana wave this big. He's worried Theo might not be able to control it properly. When someone swallows soma, they've got to handle it carefully. For the more talented Ragnars who already have loads of mana, they need to be extra cautious so the mana haul can settle properly in the dantian. Otherwise, they can end up disabled. And Vonor is pretty sure this brat is done for. But to everyone's surprise, my guy stabilizes it real quick. Theo can't help feeling a rush of happiness realizing he's got both a dragon heart and a mana haul. It's almost a little disheartening how easy it feels this time compared to his past life. But from now on, he's officially allowed to use mana, and he won't have to hold back the huge amount stored in his dragon heart anymore. He gets ready, leaps into the air, and just unleashes everything. A dragon forms from his mana and soars straight at the wall. In a single flash it hits, leaving a giant crack. Vonor is left completely boggled and announces without a doubt that Theo Ragnar has passed. The spectators are just as stunned by that display of power. A system window pops up in front of Theo, announcing that the curse of bad luck that's been hanging over him has finally ended, and his fame is starting to spread throughout the world. Genuine joy spreads across our boy's face because he's finally reached the same starting point as everyone else. The system further reveals that a lot of people have taken an interest in his impressive performance. Osa Ragnar Plunis wants to take him in as a disciple, while Julius Ragnar is pissed about how much attention is focused on him. Meanwhile, Rober Ragnar stays cautious about the kid. And lastly, Hilda Ragnar shows interest too. My guy is thrilled that not only the Black Dragon and the Sword Dragon are paying attention to him, but the fact that he's also caught Hilda's eye makes him especially happy. After all, she's got the heart of Garuda. He thinks to himself how amazing it would be if he could just get his hands on that. The other contestants start trying their luck with the white wall. One of them only manages to leave a tiny scratch as thin as a hair. He cries out that he's still got a long way to go before he can even come close to Master Theo. Ray Ragnar gives it a shot, then Hokus Lanka and Remington Nacrio. They all do their best, but none of them come anywhere close to the massive cut my guy left in the wall. This poor guy is absolutely devastated that all 4 Hounds of the North had monstrous results, yet not a single one of them made a mark as big as young Master Theo's. It's finally Axion Ragnar's turn. As he walks forward, people start murmuring among themselves. Some say that at this rate it's a contest between the Luster Tiger and the Dark Tiger, while others doubt even Axion can match that level. The fact that people are talking about Theo like this only pisses Axion off beyond belief. He strides toward the wall with his sword in hand, and once he swallows the Soma pill, he's all fired up. Mana crackles around him, and a giant red dragon pops out, slashing straight at the wall. The sheer power of it leaves Vonor completely speechless. This is the first time he's been surprised this many times in one day. The crack in the wall is massive, and Vonor promptly announces that Axion Ragnar has passed as well. The crowd goes absolutely wild, because Axion's slash left a crack just as big as Theo's. Now everyone's on edge, knowing the precision grading is going to decide who comes out on top. As dusk starts settling in, Vonor announces that with this, the first stage of the awakening ceremony is officially over. This year, he's especially satisfied seeing so many people jump up in their scores. He tells everyone who passed to prepare for the second stage in 4 days. Finally, the rankings everyone's been waiting for are about to be announced, including the valedictorian for the first stage. Everyone in the arena holds their breath as the name gets called. The clear frontrunners, Axion and Theo, are both locked in, hoping to hear their own names. In the end, Theo Ragnar clutches the win. While he's a bit stunned, the arena erupts in booming cheers. Vonor Ragnar is pleased to announce that his performance earned him a perfect 10 out of 10 from the judges. Technique, magic power, control, speed, every single aspect was flawless. While his followers are cheering their asses off, most of the other candidates can barely believe that the Luster Tiger took first place instead of Axion. Turns out the depth of his sword mark came close to the record held by young Master Thor's. That little detail makes the crowd go even wilder. Thorol Ragnar is a total enigma, one of the 5 major candidates of Ragnar and widely speculated to be the closest in the line of succession. The Salutatorian Award goes to Axion Ragnar, and his displeasure is written all over his face. He also got a perfect 10 out of 10, but he got bumped to second place because his sword mark was just a tiny bit shorter than Theo's. That fact makes his blood boil even more. Remington Nacrio snags third, Ray Ragnar takes fourth, and Hulkus Lanka lands fifth. The Hounds of the North basically locked down the top spots. Meanwhile, the idiot of the Southern Inspection Post and Theo's first follower, Sibylria, barely squeaks into the last slot at 87th place. The second stage of the awakening ceremony starts in 4 days at the treacherous Winter Mountains. All 87 examinees who passed are told to prepare as best they can. With that, they're dismissed, and the first day of the ceremony wraps up in a pretty unexpected direction. That night, Theo's faction heads straight to the tavern for a celebration. The place is roaring with cheers for the first and second placers. Everyone feels vindicated now that the true might of Training Ground number 4 has been shown to the world. Praise and applause for their very own Sir Theo and Sir Remington flow freely along with the liquor. Theo thanks his men for the support, but he knows better than anyone that the trials aren't over yet. His goal is for every single one of them to pass the second stage together. He pulled his buddy Remington closer and confidently announced to everyone that they were going to go for final valedictorian and salutatorian of the batch. Evelyn was in a full-on festive mood too, and she genuinely believed the two of them could somehow pull it off. Remington personally congratulated the young master for that badass display of power earlier. Seeing Theo's hard work finally pay off filled everyone with pride, but at the same time, Remington couldn't help feeling like shit about himself for falling so damn far behind his friend. Theo just smiled at Remy and assured him he got a little lucky this time. Besides, ranks and all that crap shouldn't matter between friends, right? Hearing that cleared Remington's head of all those useless anxieties. They made a toast with their orange juice glasses and promised to give it their best shot in the upcoming second stage. Sometime later, Theo found himself roaming the nearby snowy mountains. Finally away from the crowd, he processed what it really meant to snag first place in the awakening ceremony. It was an achievement he wouldn't even dare dream of in his past life. Even if it wasn't a real fight, he still beat Axion fair and square. He could hardly believe how far he'd come in such a short time. Clenching his fists in anticipation, Theo proclaimed that this was only the beginning of his story. Defeating and decapitating that traitorous fraud Randone was nowhere near enough. That guy was just a lackey to the actual players. Theo's true enemies were the psychotic Axion and the tricky Sky Dragon backing him up. Theo was ready to use every damn thing at his disposal to get his ultimate revenge down the line. For now, though, he had another matter of great importance to take care of concerning the nest compass he got as a reward. The mysterious artifact was actually pointing toward the Winter Mountains, the venue of the next trial. In the second stage, he'd finally have the chance to find out what the hell the compass was steering him into. While he was lost in his own thoughts, he sensed something fishy nearby. His instincts kicked in right away, ready to defend himself from whatever was hiding close by. Someone had been tailing him, and Theo hated surveillance with a passion. The hooded spy watched in surprise as his target vanished out of thin air, only to feel the cold glint of a blade aimed at his neck from behind. Theo demanded to know who the spy was, and the dude tried his best to convince Theo that he wasn't Seuss. He introduced himself as Gatsby Yotan of the renowned Gale Sword Platoon. Gatsby insisted that his captain sent him after witnessing such a splendid performance at the first test of the awakening ceremony. Theo just stared at the guy with an unreadable poker face. Looks like the scouting offers were showing up sooner than he expected. Gatsby elaborated that their captain was offering Theo a chance to take an admittance qualification test. This offer completely flabbergasted him. He was straight up offended that the Gale Sword Platoon wanted him to take some useless test instead of just giving him a full-on invitation. Gatsby started bragging about the illustrious reputation of his platoon, asserting that even a chance to take the test was hard to come by. Before the dude could spout any more nonsense, a fiery voice cut him off, calling the Gale platoon a bunch of morons. A woman carrying a great sword on her back addressed Theo as young master and offered a far better deal than those morons from the Gale Sword Platoon. This feisty girl is Ayan Suli. also known as the Fire Goblin and vice commander of the Black Iron Cavalry. She personally came to extend a direct invitation for Theo to join their ranks. Gatsby completely stumbled on his words the second he saw who had just shown up. Anyone who recognizes the Fire Goblin's name knows better than to piss her off. But before she could even get close to Theo, a bunch of scouts from different factions popped out of hiding, scared shitless that such a promising candidate might get signed before they could throw their own offer out. They all came running in, shouting their ridiculous proposals. The Black Sword Platoon was willing to promote him to squad leader within 3 years. The Swords of Law and the Security Bureau also threw their eager hats into the ring. Annoyed as hell at the bidding war unfolding right in front of her, the Fire Goblin snapped in anger. These scouts were supposed to entice the young master with promises of helping and advancing his career, but instead they were just fighting and bickering among themselves like idiots. Theo just watched from the sidelines as the bunch of them cursed and jabbed at one another. He figured he should quietly slip away before they started pestering him even more. But his exit plan might have to wait. Pink plum petals slowly filled the area, dancing through the air. A sultry voice silenced everyone with sheer aura alone. Even though she knew she'd get criticized for being too greedy, the newcomer just couldn't help herself. Slightly sullying her sterling reputation was nothing if it meant snagging an exceptionally talented individual for her side. Lady of the Plum Blossom Palace, the sword dragon herself, Osa Ragnar Plunis, had just joined the scouting war, shocking everyone into complete silence. Ion was the only one who dared to question what the hell business the clan head's first wife had in a place like this. Lady Osa simply confessed that she came with the exact same intention as everyone else. She'd come all the way out here just to see Theo Ragnar in person. While Theo was stuck dealing with this ridiculous circus, the salutatorian was off relieving some stress by beheading people. Calling Axion Ragnar a sore loser was a massive understatement. This dude was straight up wantonly killing his own men just to get his frustrations out before he exploded. He weaved, maneuvered, and slashed his way through a bunch of young swordsmen, treating them like nothing more than training dummies as he snuffed their lives out one by one. Axion Ragnar was hungry for blood, and blood he was gonna get. With every dash and slash, he kept remembering Theo's smug face after leaving that bloody, armless mess back at the Scaled Dragon Society banquet. The image of Theo unleashing so much damn draconic aura when he took that first slash in the trial was etched deep into Axion's disturbed mind. Losing by just a few inches made the whole defeat even more infuriating. The only thing running through his head was the thought of killing and gutting Theo Ragnar. For now, though, killing his own men would have to do. By the end of his rampage, he'd completely ditched his blade in favor of a much more hands-on and brutal way of venting his anger. By the time he finally calmed down, the training ground was already littered with lifeless young swordsmen who thought they were just getting a spar with their young master. When another person stepped into the arena, Axion's eyes darted around. Without even looking at who just arrived, he picked his sword back up and motioned to attack. He threw the whole blade with pinpoint accuracy, aiming straight for the intruder's head. But for someone like the Sky Dragon, stopping a basic-ass outburst like that was child's play. He just grabbed the sword's tip right out of the air. Ed Trovin cursed his nephew out for being so damn pathetic. Releasing his rage on random people wasn't going to change a single thing. When Axion finally got a good look at his uncle, he calmed down a little. The Sky Dragon advised that at times like this, Axion needed to cool his head and come up with a proper plan. Ed Trovin had already put some things in motion, and Axion only needed to follow along. The nefarious uncle and nephew duo were hell-bent on turning the second stage of the awakening ceremony into Theo Ragnar's funeral. Back in the snowy woods, the scouts quickly made way for Lady Plumblossom out of pure fear and respect. They knew that whatever they tried to offer Theo would be completely insignificant if she was in the competition. Just as they were about to start complaining about how unfair that would be, the space between Theo and Lady Osa got severed from the outside world, locking the two of them inside her personal domain. Ion figured that setting up an isolation zone could only mean one thing. She was probably planning to personally share her teachings with the young Ragnar inside that swirling lump of energy. The inside of the isolation zone was a hell of a lot bigger than it looked from the outside. As the space stretched as far as they could see, Theo recognized it as one of Lady Plumbossom's signature moves. She could freely create a perfectly isolated space completely cut off from the outside. He'd heard stories about the technique before, and now he was actually experiencing it. His popularity was definitely catching up with him. Lady Plumblossom laughed at his reaction. She was certain the demon dragon would be furious once he found out what she was trying to do. But no one could stop her from giving Theo a gift if she wanted to. And by gift, it could only mean one thing. She slowly unsheathed her blade as she described just how intense the clan head's swordsmanship was. It was like dragon fire raining down from the heavens, destroying and incinerating everything in its path. Lady Plumbossom's style couldn't be more different. She preferred embracing countless variations in her sword. Theo looked around and saw that the snowy trail he'd been walking on a minute ago had completely turned into a tranquil field of vibrant plum trees. Her steps were rhythmic, sending ripples across the still water floor with every stride. This was the form of the dragon she pursued, one full of constant and infinite changes. As the sword dragon started slowly moving forward, she began swinging her sword, making the plum blossoms bloom while countless petals gently drifted down. Her blades softly traced through the petals as they danced right alongside it. She pulled off a weird, flowing series of movements that looked straight up impossible. She slashed, stabbed, and chopped with this strange tempo. By the end of her demonstration, she slowly lowered her sword, making the petals spiral along the blade before they beautifully settled on the ground. It was absolute cinema, a total feast for Theo's eyes. The crazy part? The entire sequence was performed in just a single breath. What she just showed him was the celestial flower rain, the first full-bloom technique of the plum blossoms. Opening her eyes, the First Lady's deep gaze locked onto Theo. The young man was completely speechless as he felt his heart pounding like crazy. He'd just witnessed something truly awe-inspiring. Within that single continuous movement, he counted 120 circles and variations. It completely backed up the claims that, when it came to pure swordsmanship, she was above even the clan head. If Theo could absorb and apply even a little bit of what he'd just seen into his single flash, his power would skyrocket for sure. He humbly asked her if he was really deserving of a gift like that. She just laughed lightly and assured him it was fine as long as he enjoyed watching it. Finally, Lady Plum Blossom dissolved the isolation zone. The tranquil field of plum trees vanished, and the snowy woods came right back. She told him that if he ever wanted to see what came after the first technique, he could come find her whenever after the awakening ceremony. That blatant offer left the scouts completely shocked. The First Lady simply wished for Theo to become a new wind in this desolate place. With that, her body turned into a pile of beautiful plum petals and drifted away. Theo knew better than anyone that he'd just received something way too great. It'd be hard even for him to act completely shameless and not show any gratitude to the First Lady. Now he was stuck in a complicated position. He figured it would be way too greedy to become Lady Plum Blossom's disciple and join the white-armored dragon cavalry at the same time. 3 days later, the second phase of the trial finally kicked off into full gear. The 87 eligible candidates had all gathered at the Winter Mountains near the northern Great Wall. Such a treacherous venue was perfect for the challenge ahead. The Winter Mountains stretched across a ridiculously vast distance, from their home of winter all the way to the Demon Sea. In this place, the Ragnars had been shielding humanity with everything they had. They'd been at war with the cursed land beyond the Great Wall for over a millennium now, culling the Demon Sea where countless demonic fiends just ran wild and caused havoc. High-ranked swordsman and second-stage exam overseer Jackie Ragnar cautioned everyone that the new generation would inherit that duty one day. That made the Winter Mountains the perfect testing ground. However, as apprentice swordsmen, the examinees weren't allowed to cross over to the Demon Sea, and the exam area was strictly limited to the inner side of the Great Wall. Today's exam was pretty simple. They'd have 15 days to defenders roaming the Winter Mountains and retrieve the bells that had been placed around their necks. There were 7 different colored bells out there: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet, the colors of the rainbow. Each bell was worth more points in that same order. Naturally, higher points meant dealing with a more powerful demonic fiend. Overseer Jackie made sure to emphasize just how dangerous the Violet Bell fiends were. Those abominations were on a level no apprentice swordsman could even touch, let alone defeat. Still, they were worth a ton of points. The hunting method was left entirely up to the examinees. Whatever method they chose didn't matter. All they had to do was bring the bells back to be tallied before the exam ended. Everyone immediately picked up on what the overseer was implying, since they could use whatever method they wanted. Snatching someone else's prey or bells was allowed. Hell, it was encouraged. They were purposely sowing seeds of discord among everyone. But that was just another reflection of the Ragnar clan's law of the jungle approach to things. As a final note, the overseer told them about the totems installed across the mountains that repelled fiends. Inside those safe zones, supplies had been buried nearby, and everyone was encouraged to make good use of them. Finally, Overseer Jackie formally signaled the start of the second trial. The second he dismissed everyone, several candidates took off and scattered without a second thought. Most of them were thinking the same thing as Sybil. Since the exam was going to stretch for a full 15 days, supplies were essential. First, they'd secure those resources, then they'd go with their own strategies. It had barely even started, but Hulk Lanka was loving every second of this test. He was right in his element. Axion, fueled by pure revenge, had come into this exam with a malicious goal in mind. His Sky Dragon uncle had drilled it into him that he had to stick to the plan precisely. All he had to do was play his role, and Theo would fall. As Axion single-mindedly pushed forward at breakneck speeds, he completely failed to notice someone tailing him from behind. It was none other than the ever-mysterious Ray Ragnar. Seeing that everyone else was already rolling out, Theo started walking toward the woods to get going too. But before he could get far, a familiar voice called out to him. Remy ran up to his side and asked if Theo remembered saying they were friends. The Silver Lion had thought long and hard over the past 3 days leading up to the trial, and it seemed he'd decided Theo was both a friend and a rival. With that realization, a real desire had taken root inside him, the desire to truly surpass young Master Theo in power. The young dragon was shocked at first, but he eventually grinned with pure delight. He knew exactly what Remy was feeling. The moment they first crossed swords back in that training ground, a mutual respect for each other had blossomed. Theo felt the same way about the Silver Lion. He considered him a dear friend and rival too. Remy heartily laughed in relief, since he'd been stressing over whether the feeling was one-sided. With that renewed clarity, Remy proclaimed that he was going to try to beat Theo during the second stage. Theo genuinely wished him good luck with that goal. Without wasting another precious second, Remy exploded forward in a burst of speed and headed deep into the winter mountains. Theo took a second to just soak that feeling in. Someone incredible like Remington had set him as a goal, someone to surpass. It gave him a thrill he'd never felt before. He was finally becoming someone who was truly strong, and damn if that didn't feel good. Opening his inventory, Theo set the mushy feelings aside for after the trial. He pulled out the nest compass and officially started the search for the dragon's nest. The compass needle pointed him in a general direction, enough to get started. On the side of one of those deadly cliff faces, the familiar blue light of the system shone through a hidden cavern. The nest compass had led Theo to the treacherous outskirts of the winter mountains. When he arrived at his supposed destination, he was confused as hell and saw absolutely nothing that stood out. The compass had turned its needle straight toward the ground, so that had to mean something, right? Maybe he needed to start digging until he hit the jackpot. If that was the case, he really should have brought a shovel, because using the white moonlight blade to dig through snowy soil would have been a gross misuse of a legendary sword. As he was standing there considering what to do, Theo's spidey senses started tingling once again. He steadily drew his sword from the scabbard and spun around on a dime. His eyes locked onto the unwelcome presence. Sometimes, if the wind isn't doing its job, you've just got to take to the oars. He sent out a sweeping attack, the force of the slash mowing down everything in its path. The trees were cleared in a clean line and the ground got completely wrecked, spilling some killing intent toward the presence secretly tailing him. He gravely urged them to come the hell out. A few unsavory characters started stepping out of the woods, completely confused about how Theo had noticed their well-concealed presence. The second Theo got a good look at the guy's face, he was taken aback. It wasn't just one man. There were 3 of them. In Theo's previous life, he knew these monsters as the 3 scoundrels of Vuk Mountain, Hyde, Cow, and Rune. These aptly named assholes were the absolute scum of the earth. They were widely known for slaughtering civilians and covering it up as accidents during missions. They were the cancer that cropped up as a nasty side effect of the Ragnar's rule of the strong. Theo especially could never forget the massacre they committed in Vuk village. Back when he was working in Black Snow, he'd been assigned to personally clean up after those bastards. He knew better than anyone the kind of horror these three would inflict on the world. According to the public records, the death toll from that single incident was reported at 761, with another 220 people missing. The truly shocking part was that none of the corpses could be identified at all because their killing method involved completely smashing the heads of their targets for fun. He'd already figured their terrible nature would get in the way down the line, so he was planning to deal with them at some point. He just never expected to run into them this early, especially since they'd been expertly tailing him. Theo asked if Axion had sent them for a hit or something. One of the scoundrels just laughed at his assumption and made it clear they couldn't be ordered around by some kids. Naturally, they were employed by someone so high up that Theo would never even imagine who was behind the hit, but the young dragon quickly narrowed it down to one person for certain, the head counselor. The scoundrel's reaction completely gave it away. Theo had guessed the employer correctly on the first try. It wasn't exactly hard to figure out, considering how much they'd been talking about blood and heritage. There wasn't an exam proctor anywhere nearby either, so those guys had to be in on the conspiracy too. Theo's sharpness was a real problem for them, but the scoundrels were still confident they'd get this job in the bag no matter what. The leader of the group asserted that he felt the best when he crushed a good-looking face like Theo's. Bro was just glazing at this point. The Flash Tiger stayed completely unfazed and refused to let the three of them out of his sight. He didn't even give the mouthy scoundrel a chance to keep going with the childish trash talk. Theo immediately slashed forward, summoning an avatar of an ancient dragon with his force. They hadn't even gotten the chance to close the distance yet, and the scoundrels were already at death's door. Theo chopped his sword 3 times in quick succession with perfect precision and executed his newly formulated technique, Triple Dragon's Claw, each strike targeting one of the scoundrels. The young master never shied away from violence, but he sure as hell didn't want to become like these pieces of trash, so he was doing this as revenge for a crime they wouldn't even commit until a few years down the line. He'd do the exact opposite of what those scumbags did, only their heads would remain. The destructive power of the dragon's claw was so potent it could turn a human body into absolute pulp while leaving the head perfectly intact. He simply flexed on these criminals and gave them the comeuppance they deserved. Theo was actually a little surprised at how fast these troublemakers went down to his blade. Maybe that was just because they were still young at this point in time. He owed this new skill to the celestial flower rain that Lady Plumblossom had briefly shown him. He'd spent the past 3 days dissecting and reconstructing the style, and somehow managed to figure out a way to chain 3 single flashes in a row. Using circles and arcs to draw those curved lines of slashes was a real pain in the ass, but a whole new world of different transformations and applications had opened up. Of course, pulling off those transformations 120 times in a row like the First Lady was still way out of reach. Theo quickly grabbed the severed heads, their pained and surprised expressions still frozen on their faces, and simply tossed the evidence down the cliff for the beasts to feast on while he went back to figuring out how to get underground. Much to his surprise, he heard a dull thud the second the heads dropped just a couple meters down. Upon closer inspection, he realized there was an invisible staircase winding down the side of the cliff. It was now stained with scoundrel blood. The hidden quest to find the unseen stairs and explore the blue cave had officially started. Theo excitedly jumped down from the cliff to go claim his treasure. Unbeknownst to him, a strange bird had been keeping an eye on everything from afar. Back in the palace, the officials posted that they were receiving the test's initial results for the first few hours. Currently, Axion Ragnar held first place with 41 demon bells collected as he tore through the exam with 20 of his men. Second place was Ray Ragnar, but everyone kept wondering about one thing: how the hell was Theo Ragnar doing? The messenger had to scroll all the way down to the last page of his report just to find Theo's recorded progress. Right now, the young man had collected 0 demon bells and was off on his own without a team. It was safe to assume he was either moving quietly or lying in ambush somewhere. Those assumptions could easily be checked if any proctors were around to confirm. Everyone at the table could hear the impatience in Lady Plumblossom's voice. The head counselor argued that there were no rules saying exceptional performance in the first stage automatically meant the same caliber in the second. He even floated the idea that the kid's heart might not be ready for real battles, especially since he was a so-called natural child and not a pure Ragnar. The head counselor figured his goons must have taken care of business quickly and done their job better than expected. Suddenly, the old councilman received a telephonic transmission from Ed Trovan asking if he'd done anything behind the scenes. The head counselor didn't even bother denying the allegation. He was a little bummed he couldn't tell everyone else beforehand, but it looked like things had worked out, so that was good enough. Even the Sky Dragon was shocked at the guy's brazen attitude toward an impure child of the throne. It pissed Ed the hell off that some crazy elitist old coot had acted without permission or consultation, potentially screwing up his plans. After Kumelia had been taken from his family, the Sky Dragon had campaigned hard for a shot at taking over the Rose Palace. Problem was, he couldn't find the primordial dragon's relic anywhere. Ed Trovan had come up with a hypothesis that Theo must be holding some kind of clue about the Rose Palace relic. The Sky Dragon could feel it in his bones. That boy Theo had something on him related to the relic. He'd grown, and he'd clearly shown himself as a real threat. Using telepathy again, Ed jacked into a guard's mind with a message to hurry Axion the hell up. Lady Plumblossom could see that the head counselor and the Central Intelligence Director were scheming something, and they weren't nearly as sneaky as they thought. The pro-Theo group might have to start setting up some precautions and countermeasures of their own. It was a reasonable idea, but Julius Ragnar heavily opposed it. The demon dragon genuinely believed Theo wasn't the type to crumble under a mere challenge. Julius trusted his gut that Theo was safe and just stuck dealing with some unknown circumstance of his own. Also, Julius still hadn't gotten over the fact that Lady Plumblossom had sneakily met with Theo. The First Lady just feigned ignorance and playfully laughed it off. Back in the Winter Mountains, Theo finally managed to see where those stairs were leading. Inside was a relatively simple cave structure, but there were a bunch of pesky skeletons hanging around on the outskirts. They kept attacking with a pretty strong mental attack trap set up inside. Most people would have had a full-on breakdown if they got caught in it. Luckily for Theo, low-level mental attacks like that were nothing after he'd already passed the White Moonlight Blade's tough-ass test. More importantly, he managed to follow the compass needle and find something to check on the situation. Theo expanded his senses outward, making all the nearby wildlife scurry for their lives. For times like this, that special divinity skill was just too damn juicy. He could even see what was lurking behind every corner. Casting those thoughts aside, Theo was the first one to arrive and get tested. Finally, he found the hatchling's lair. 3 years from now, things would probably look a lot different. Black Snow would end up killing the hatchling and discovering a priceless legendary item. Walking deeper into the cavern, Theo quietly apologized to the future of Black Snow as he planned to snag one of their historic records. Behind the gate was the AN Grimoire, a one-of-a-kind game-changer. The second Theo stepped through the gate, he froze in place, completely overwhelmed by the sight in front of him. There were literal mountains of gold and legendary weapons, gems, and trinkets scattered everywhere. One thing was for sure, this place was no hatchling's nest. Right in the middle of the gigantic room was a sleeping draconic beast, an ancient dragon using a sea of gold coins as the most expensive bed in the world. Looking a bit closer, it seemed to be in a deep sleep, totally uncaring about the outside world. Theo wasn't delusional. He knew that if this thing woke up and decided to attack, he could forget about the relic and all the riches in this place. He'd be dead for sure. Could the reports from Black Snow have been wrong? Why the hell was there a full-grown dragon in the chamber instead of just a hatchling? Maybe he was a victim of misinformation, or maybe he'd just shown up 3 years too early. Either way, he needed to figure out his next move in this unexpected situation. He seriously considered just leaving without touching a single thing. It sucked, but he could always come back later before Black Snow got here a few years down the line. That choice got ripped right out of his hands the second the dragon opened its eyes. When he turned around, Theo found himself locked in a staring contest with one of the most archaic beings in the world. Much to his surprise, the ancient dragon Roadbrook spoke in human tongue, calling him the first selector that had come in a long time. The giant beast was actually kind of chill. It even introduced itself without a hint of hostility. Roadbrook explained that the Ragnars called her the guardian dragon and the owner of Winter Mountain. Pretty much everyone who grew up around the clan knew that name. Trying not to be rude or disrespectful, Theo dropped to his knees and paid his respects to his ancestor. Roadbrook seemed pretty interested in the fact that the young human had called her an ancestor. As far as Theo had been taught his whole life, the guardian dragon Roadbrook was the companion of the Ragnar clan's progenitor, Sigurd, and the mother of Friedreif. The beast asserted that Friedreif, that bastard, must have been spreading a whole lot of nonsense out there. While it was true that she and Sigurd had been old companions for a time, she only saw it as a sign of respect for the contractor who'd sold his soul to dragons. There wasn't much emotional exchange between them at all. Hell, it was straight up impossible for humans to mate with dragons in the first place. Maybe the humans in this world just weren't real monster bangers. That led Theo to ask if his family's line actually had the blood of the dragon, or if it was just one big propaganda campaign to prop up the Ragnar name. Roadbrook cleared it up right away. The claim wasn't wrong at all. Through the long-term contract between her and Sigurd, her dragon's blood had been shared. Just as Theo was about to dig deeper into his family's history, Roadbrook cut him off. She was done with the pleasantries. It was time to start her duties as a guardian dragon to the selectors. From this point forward, she was going to uphold the covenant made at the beginning of the clan and allow the selector who passed her test to ask 3 questions. Theo could finally breathe a sigh of relief and thank the gods. This actually seemed like a non-battle situation. Since his goal was to eventually stand at the peak of the clan, deepening his knowledge of the family's lore was crucial. Through these 3 questions, he needed to squeeze out as much information as possible. Outside, the second phase of the awakening ceremony was still in full swing. Axion continued dominating the leaderboard and the beasts in the surrounding area. His 1,000 dragons roar was already powerful enough to one-shot most enemies. As a white tiger beast collapsed onto the snowy ground, bloodied and lifeless, Axion walked closer. He headed straight for the green bell dangling around the poor cat's neck. With another bell secured, that made 57 confirmed kills. He was racking up points crazy fast. Still, killing these monsters was secondary. Axion was just itching to find Theo, but his scouts kept giving him the same damn report over and over. Theo was nowhere to be seen. One of Axion's lackeys, Orion Gardner, smugly remarked that Theo must be scared shitless now that he actually had to risk his life and face real monsters. Orion was determined to stick to Axion's entourage the whole way through, no matter what. He both feared and believed in the maniac's strength, but he might have run his mouth a little too far when he admitted that Theo had gotten stronger, yet lived as an idiot for far too long. The next thing you know, Orion was tearing up and gasping for oxygen as Axion's hand slowly crushed his windpipe in a chokehold. Axion reckoned this pissant of a follower must not know a simple fact because he'd never been strong himself. In the clan, having power meant you didn't need to fear a damn thing. The Dark Leopard was on the brink of mentally breaking at this point, and he was still as cruel and paranoid as ever. Orion tried to eke out an apology between his desperate gasps for air. This little outburst would have kept going if another messenger hadn't come running in with a message from the director of the Central Intelligence Bureau, Ed Trovan. The message was just a simple reminder to hurry up and carry the plan out. Axion threw the pissant away like garbage and told the messenger to send a reply to his uncle. Stop pestering him. He didn't need to be reminded of the goal because no one in this world wanted to kill that punk Theo more than this psychotic half-brother of his. Meanwhile, Theo was just chilling down in the dragon's den, still trying to come up with a solid question that would give him as much info as possible. After a while, he finally landed on his first one. Roadbrook yawned. She was just glad the young man had finally made up his mind. The boredom had almost knocked her right back into a deep sleep. So the first question was simple. Why was the guardian dragon still here? He kept it short and sweet. Roadbrook instantly clocked his strategy of asking basic questions to dig up some hidden background knowledge and gave the kid some props for it. The reason she was still hanging around was pretty straightforward. There was a monster sitting at the very edge of the world, its body spread out across the seas. They called this thing the Nameless Monarch. For the past 1,000 years or so, Roadbrook had been lying in wait and staying in her lair because she was tasked with protecting the world. The Winter Mountains and this dragon's den were just an outpost. Theo fell silent, trying to digest the bombshell his ancestor had just dropped. He was certain he hadn't imagined it. For a brief moment, he caught what looked like fear in Roadbrook's eyes. Who the hell would have thought that an almost godlike figure as powerful as an ancient dragon could still feel terror? There was an existence out there that could scare a deity who'd reigned for over 1,000 years. The nameless monarch had to be one freaky bastard. Theo desperately wanted to ask more and dig deeper into the lore, but there were more important things he needed to find out first. So for the second question, he asked what exactly these ancient dragon relics he'd kept hearing about even were. Roadbrook answered that there were about 3 relics out in the world. She didn't know much about them, but she could sense that the young selector had been pretty damn lucky. The 3 she knew of were the dungeon in Camellia Palace and the White Moonlight Blade. As for the last one, it was a bit more complicated. Roadbrook called it the Ancient Dragon Paper's Relic. It came from a great ancient dragon's soul fragmenting into 31 different pieces. Those pieces had been given to humans in hopes of protecting humanity and resisting the nameless monarch. The form of these relics wasn't limited either. Some could be items, some could take the form of an experience, and a rare few even turned into intangible yet strange phenomena. Hearing that last part made the gears in Theo's head start spinning. He could finally see that he'd always had the last relic inside him. Everything he'd experienced after regressing in time flashed before his eyes. Going through 20 years of life and then getting yanked back to the brink of death was about the strangest phenomenon anyone could ever go through. His regression must have been just another form of an ancient dragon's relic, which meant Theo himself contained the relic. He must have been given a fragment of Paper's soul, but something still wasn't adding up. There was always a dragon protecting the relics, yet there hadn't been any such thing with his regression. Realizing something, Theo came up with the third and final question. He looked Roadbrook straight in her piercing eyes and asked why he was chosen. Why would the hand of fate pick someone as talentless as Ragnar's imbecile to fight something as powerful as the nameless monarch? Roadbrook stared right back at him just as fiercely and decided to answer his final question with a question of her own. She asked why the hell Theo thought he was the only one chosen out there. That simple reply hit him like a truck and made him realize he'd been staring at the whole thing through a tiny-ass keyhole. He might not be the only one these powerful relics picked. Sky Dragon Ed Trovan, the demon craftsman Kursinen, even the Black Dragon, all of them already knew the relics existed. Hell, they even went out of their way hunting the damn things down. Chances are they got chosen by some piece of Paper's soul fragment too. And if that's the case, are they seeing the same messages Theo's been getting? Did they also get sent back in time? Those questions pushed him one step closer to figuring out the world's real truth, but damn if they didn't also make everything a whole lot messier. So here's the short version. There's some nameless monarch lurking at the edge of the planet that even the ancient dragon is scared of, and it's completely possible there are other regressors besides Theo. Now that Roadbrook had answered his 3 questions, the quest was done, and it was reward time. The young man was so deep in all the crazy implications he'd just uncovered that he almost forgot he originally came here for Aen's grimoire. But with his horizons blown wide open, he'd changed his mind. He needed something bigger, a lot bigger. Something that made every other item in this treasure trove look like pocket change. As his reward, he got to pick and take anything he wanted from the ancient dragon's hoard. Roadbrook proudly bragged about how many treasures she'd collected from all over the world. Gems, relics, elixirs, skill books, weapons, you name it. She had the whole damn catalog. Whatever Theo picked would be a fortune beyond his wildest dreams. She told him to choose carefully and promised she'd deliver. Theo's lips slowly curled into a sly little smile. When the ancient dragon asked him what he wanted, Theo Ragnar proudly said he wanted Roadbrook herself. That answer definitely threw her for a loop. She treated it like a joke at first and played along, but then she got serious and told the Ragnar kid to cut the crap and name his real choice. Theo stood his ground and said he'd already told her exactly what he wanted. The dragon paused, then asked if he was actually serious. Once he confirmed it, she let her full menacing aura loose. The ground rumbled under Theo's feet as she hit him with that heavy dragon fear, calling his words disrespectful and yelling at him for crossing the line. Theo felt the full weight of that attack and still forced himself to stay standing. Just her roar was strong enough to make blood leak out of every damn opening on his face. He fired back with his own lesser Drake's fear, which was completely pointless, of course. Even Lodbrok thought he was an idiot for trying to match an ancient dragon's roar with that weak-ass version. Still determined, Theo shouted his request again, reminding the guardian dragon that she'd told him he could pick any treasure from her nest. And according to her own words, nothing said he couldn't pick the guardian dragon Lodrock herself. He was talking a big game, but even Theo knew this was a massive risk, one he was ready to put his life on the line for. This beast, the guardian dragon Lodrock, had basically built the Ragnar clan alongside the progenitor Sigurd. Becoming her partner would mean Theo had finally proven himself as a real warrior of the Ragnar clan. He's ready to throw his whole damn life away for this shot if it means stopping the atrocities of the dark past from ever happening again. Theo straight up demands the guardian dragon surrender herself, just like she promised with her own words. The warrior's voice is aching as he basically begs for her help. Right then, the guardian dragon catches a glimpse of the legend of Sigurd trailing behind Theo like a shadow. Seeing that image, Lodrock lets out a roar and accepts his request. Theo's completely shocked. A few seconds later, she shrinks down into a smaller, more human-like form, those sharp golden eyes locked right on him. Lodbrok's impressed, so she's willing to give the kid a shot. She stands there in all her majestic beauty, and Theo just freezes, speechless for a couple seconds. She reminds him she's over 2,000 years old, so there's no point letting his mind wander in that direction. Theo points at her chest, and no, you horn dogs, he's not talking about the pair of personalities you're probably thinking about. He's talking about the actual hole left from a battle 50 years ago. Lodbrok lost her heart back then and has basically been waiting to die ever since. She's only got 3 years left. That's why she can't leave her nest, which means she can't exactly tag along and help him out in person. So she asks one more time, is he really serious about picking her as his treasure? This simpleton just smiles and confirms he hasn't changed his mind one bit. He wants her as his reward. You know, guys, under different circumstances, this would sound pretty damn horrible. The system confirms the selection of the guardian dragon as his reward. Lodrock calls it a foolish choice, but figures it's just one of those weird qualities that come with being the chosen one. The system hands him the title of the guardian dragon's significant other, plus descendant of the clan's progenitor. Theo promises he'll get even stronger and climb way higher, then admits he's going after the rest of the primordial dragon Fafnir's relics. A solid link forms between the guardian dragon and the warrior as Theo swears he'll find something that can basically replace Lodbrok's heart. After all, among the relics of that all-powerful primordial dragon, there's gotta be something miraculous that can help her out. He levels up from the experience points too. Theo figures it's only right he does at least this much if he's gonna claim the title of the guardian dragon's significant other. You guys see what I'm talking about, right? She gives him a little smirk and says she hopes her new partner takes good care of her. Yeah, this one's going straight on Santa's naughty list. Lodbrok reminds him she's still stuck in the domain, so he's gonna have to figure something out on his own until she hibernates for a bit. She's also got something for him, an ancient-looking book. She explains that if he wants his soul to truly sync up with hers, he's got to read the artifact and awaken his mind gate. She figures he can pull it off in about a month and tells him to take his time flipping through it. The system pings him about a bonus reward he just got, the grimoire called Aeon. Theo checks its properties and is pretty damn impressed. It holds magical principles that go all the way back to the beginning of time. It's a special book packed with rich knowledge about basically everything in the universe. Theo's glad as hell he managed to get his hands on this baby, but what really bugs him is that 1 month timeline she just dropped. He asks Lodbrok what she means by 1 month. The guardian dragon says it usually takes that long to awaken a person's mind gate, then asks if he's got something more important keeping him busy. Theo looks disappointed as he explains he's stuck dealing with the second stage of the awakening ceremony, which is happening right now. The exam only lasts 15 days total, so he's got less than half a month to figure everything out. That's why he wants to wait until the exam's over before getting started. Lodbrok eyes him down and admits it's possible, but she won't allow it. She doesn't want him slipping away so soon. So for this dude, she wants him to open that mind gate before the second stage ends. Until then, she's making damn sure he stays right here. Yeah, that's a bone-chilling threat. Total time left until the exam wraps up is 13 days, roughly 300-something hours. He's got to get it done in that window. All right, let's rewind a little. There were 3 days left before the second stage kicked off when Axion's uncle was explaining how the totems create anti-fiend safety zones. The reason? There's a fiend summoning marble sitting inside each totem. It's a tiny sphere loaded with amplified fiend energy that keeps other fiends away. He crushes one to show what happens. A fiend monster pops out right away. Basically, you can summon them anytime, anywhere. A bunch of fiends immediately swarm around the guy, which just shows how convenient those marbles are. He smashes them with his dragon spirit and says the whole point of the second stage exam is to eliminate fiends and rack up points. So Theo's only real option is to hunt those things for points. Axion's starting to see the bigger picture of his uncle's plan. Use the marbles to bait Theo into a trap. But his uncle reminds him it's not that simple. They're not just going to kill the guy with some basic baiting scheme. They need more info on the Rose Palace relics. Axion's got a serious hate boner for Theo, so he wants to torture the hell out of him and force the information out. His uncle has to humble the kid with a simple but sharp reminder. The gap between him and Theo's strength isn't nearly as big as he thinks. He's not going to get his way that easily. On top of that, Theo's been showing compassion, which means his followers could be used against him. The uncle suggests using the dropouts gathered in the fourth training ground as hostages to squeeze info about the artifact out of Theo. Since it's not a straight-up strength approach, Axion's pissed, but he goes along with it anyway. Fast forward to their plan actually playing out in the present. The Dark Leopard is thinking about how Theo completely shocked everyone by staying hidden until the very end of the exam. Only 12 hours left until the second stage wraps up, and the Ragnar prodigy is sitting in first place with a ridiculous 860 points. Still, he thinks it's a real pity their whole plan fell apart like that. One of his guys wonders if the scoundrels from the council got to Theo first. Seems like the only reasonable explanation for why the guy just vanished. Felix Ragnar, currently sitting in 7th place, shares the same thought. Axion immediately fires back, saying Felix's observation is borderline stupid. He digs the knife in deeper by reminding him why Lady Plumblossom took an interest in Theo instead of him. Felix is pissed as hell. All he was trying to do was help catch the guy, but Axion couldn't care less about his feelings. Axion stands up with that sinister little smile of his and makes a declaration. If Theo isn't ready to come out on his own, he'll force him out. He's got both the Scaled Dragon Society and the Plum Blossom Palace working under him. Time to lead the charge and murder the failures of the fourth training ground. This psychopath plans to keep the killing spree going until Theo has no choice but to show his face. Eavesdropping on the whole conversation from her hiding spot is Ray Ragnar, currently holding 3rd place in the exam. The scene shifts to a frost lizard fiend getting wrecked by a group of warriors. They're celebrating like they just took down some legendary beast, even though it's just a yellow bell creature. These poor guys barely have any points to their names, and there's only 12 hours left until the exam ends. They're worried about Theo, especially since they stocked up a whole bunch of supplies for him. Maybe he's off doing something more important. At least that's what one of them figures. Survival's the bare minimum for this exam anyway. Rankings don't really matter. Still, they were hoping to see him top the charts and become valedictorian again. While they're chatting carelessly, some bastard suddenly impales one of them. Orion Gardner just murdered Sybil in cold blood. The rest of the group is freaking out, questioning what the hell the Scaled Dragon Society is doing. Then they find out the hard way. They've become today's targets just to lure Theo out. These poor guys are about to get wrecked simply for existing. Meanwhile, back in Lodbrok's nest of gold and treasures, the Guardian Dragon is genuinely impressed that Theo managed to open his mind gate in less than half a month. The system confirms he's got an initial grasp on the magical principles. All of that is thanks to the knowledge he picked up in his previous life before regressing. The key to learning the AN Grimoire is the quantity and quality of magic power. Since Theo has both a monohell and a dragon heart, the whole process comes naturally to him. He learns twice as fast as a regular person. As a result, a lower-ranked skill called Hatchling Synchro pops up. It lets him mind-read objects using psychokinesis magic. Lodbrok decides he's proven himself worthy of being her partner. He's got the fundamentals down, The rest can be handled with training. She also tells him that when the time is right and he reaches a higher level, he'll start hearing her voice. Eventually, he'll be able to cast Lodbrok's power, the same ability the progenitor of the clan once had. But before any of that can happen, the guardian dragon needs to recover. She's still only got 3 years left. Theo, ever the optimist, promises he's going to impress her with his accomplishments. Satisfied, she declares the primordial covenant complete. Lodbrok gives him a heartfelt farewell and says she hopes they meet again soon. And with that, we finally see this guy step foot outside. It's a good thing he got the pack sorted, but he's still sitting at 0 points with only 12 hours left on the clock. Even Theo's thinking he's playing life on extra hard difficulty right now. He runs through his options and realizes that if he tries hunting fiends the normal way, there's no damn way he's hitting first place in 12 hours. So the only real strategy left is to steal bells from the other candidates. He remembers how Axion took first place in his past life and figures it'll play out the same way this time. All he has to do is deal with his Ragnar rival and snatch the top spot. Easy to say, of course. Behind him, a figure stumbles out of the woods. They're barely holding it together with all the injuries and immediately grab the hero's attention. It's Ray Ragnar, and she's in really bad shape. Theo wonders if some powerful fiend got the jump on her. He still can't wrap his head around the idea that a fiend actually beat her. Then he spots the sword slash across her body and realizes a person did this. He worriedly asks what the hell happened, but Ray's in no condition to talk. She just urges him to head west, and then collapses right into his arms. Using his brand new ability to read the minds of objects, Theo pulls the memories from the sword's owner. He sees that Ray had been secretly spying on the group that was out hunting his companions. The failures from the 4th training ground were all tied up and getting the shit beaten out of them. The only question left was whether to kill them or not. Someone asked Orion why he dragged 9 of these clowns along when 2 or 3 would have been plenty for a hostage situation. Before those lunatics could finish off the innocents, Ray stepped up valiantly and exposed herself right in front of Axion. The Dark Leopard reminded him this was a personal matter, so she wouldn't interfere. Ray still refused to let the madness slide and got ready to fight. Axion was disappointed she'd been persuaded by Theo and prepared to take her down. Their fight kicked off in a chaotic, powerful exchange, and by the end, Ray took a brutal slash. Beyond that, the memories are locked because Theo's skill level is still too low. Theo's furious and completely lost as to why Axion went this far just to capture his allies. Ray's shocked he managed to piece the whole truth together without her saying a word. He begs her for answers, and in her half-dead state she explains that Axion's goal from the very beginning was to capture Theo. Since the guy was nowhere to be found, he took matters into his own hands and grabbed Theo's friends as hostages instead. That hits Theo hard. He's supremely pissed. He realizes his enemies from the previous life aren't planning to back down in this one either, but this time he's a hell of a lot more capable of dealing with them. He demands to know where Axion is and what the bastard's planning. Meanwhile, one of Axion's henchmen reports Theo's location up on the northern cliffside. The news catches Axion off guard for a second, but his men are certain Theo's already made contact with Ray Ragnar, which means they'll be heading this way soon. Theo, filled with the pure joy of finally getting to cut the guy down, waits for him with an evil little grin. Axion's quickly reminded there's no need for a one-on-one confrontation. His main goal is still gathering clues about the relics. His men can handle Theo. In the meantime, they want him to activate the summoning marbles and create a big distraction in the surrounding area. Axion buys into the plan and says he's ready to go through with it. Going back to Ray, she's begging him not to go. Even the Central Intelligence proctors are in on this whole grand scheme to take him down. It's way beyond his current strength. She lays out the real state of the exam. It's basically a slaughterhouse right now, a trap set up purely to kill him. Going alone is the riskiest move he could make, and she'd rather he just ask the proctors for help. Theo still thinks there's no time. He's grateful as hell for what she did, but he can't just sit there and ignore what's happening to his friends. That's why he's ready to move the second she drops Axion's location. At this point, Ray's convinced the guy's gone completely crazy. The stakes are too high and death is basically guaranteed if he heads there. She tells him to play it safe this time. Theo lashes right back, saying he has zero desire to lose his precious loved ones a second time. They promised they'd make it out of the second stage together, after all. Ray mutters about the inevitable fate of the Ragnars and reminds him that sacrifices are always on the table. He bites back by pointing out her own resolve to fight Axion's cruelty. Even she couldn't just sit around and watch the terror unfold. The whole scene makes him relive the memories of his original life, when everything he knew went up in flames, all because he was weak in a clan that was supposed to raise the strongest. Theo's done with always losing people and getting played for a fool. He drives it home that he refuses to relive the mistakes of his past. Fueled by pure anger and determination, he demands Axion's location. The scene shifts over to Remington Narcio, who's just come across the abandoned supplies Sybil and the others dropped. There's blood everywhere. Something's clearly wrong. He turns and confronts the two warriors standing in the distance, Hulkus Lanka in 5th place and Eric Lanka in 4th. And finally, we learn Remington Narcio himself is trailing right behind Axion as the current second-place guy. Back to Theo's side. He's out here fighting a snow fiend. He dodges the first few attacks, then finishes the whole thing in one clean move because he's got way more important shit to deal with. He takes off running toward Axion, hoping at least some of his friends are still alive. He knows for a fact that Ed is messing with Axion's feelings and making sure Theo gets taken out without the clan raising much of a fuss. The Intelligence Bureau proctors siding with Axion is the biggest piece of evidence he's got. Theo cuts down the creatures with his triple dragon claw strike, figuring the same proctors who are supposed to kill him will probably keep Axion from going completely off the rails. Still, he prioritizes speed. Knowing how easy Axion is to provoke and how impulsive the guy gets, Theo thinks he can use that nature against him. He lunges for an aerial strike, drives his sword straight through the fiend's head, and a pool of blood spills out. Let's check on Ray real quick. She's collecting her thoughts, remembering how Theo hasn't changed one bit since they were kids. Even in her messed up condition, she wants to help him this time. Meanwhile, the hostages are getting the absolute shit kicked out of them under Axion's heel. He's ready to cut them down just for making the slightest noise, until the proctors remind him again not to act on his own and stir up unnecessary conflicts. So Axion stops his blade and waits patiently. He already knows 4 high-ranking swordsmen from the proctors are being sent to silently assassinate Theo. After all, his uncle's of the opinion that Axion just isn't powerful enough to take Theo down, which is frustrating as hell for him to accept, since he still sees Theo as nothing more than an insect. And right on cue, the devil himself decides to show his face. Axion spots him covered in trails of blood like some killing machine straight out of a war zone. Theo's eyes are locked in with pure determination as he takes in the beat-up state of his companions all around. He glances at the scumbags who caused this whole mess, then turns back to Axion, who's clearly been waiting for him a long while. Finally, his gaze lands on the corpses of his friends, and he tightens his grip on his weapon. Axion draws his sword, ready to throw down, but once again he's told to stay put, so he lets the weapon drop. Moving into negotiations, Axion tells Theo to just spill the info on the artifacts if he wants to see his friends walk away alive. Shockingly, Theo Ragnar asks if the guy's actually afraid of him. It's a calculated move. He planned the whole time to use Axion's nature against him. Theo arrogantly mocks him for being a coward and pulling these extreme measures just to avoid a crushing defeat. Axion's blood starts boiling, but Theo keeps going. He claims the only reason Axion's surrounded by all these scumbags is to protect his own name. Then there's the whole hostage game. To Theo, it's just a desperate all-out effort to avoid losing face as a man unworthy of the title of the 4 Hounds. Axion is now royally pissed, exactly what Theo wanted. He keeps egging him on, challenging him to a proper duel like a real Ragnar would, unless he wants to back out like the coward he is. That last push is all it takes. Axion can't hold it in anymore. Theo lays out the conditions. If he loses, he'll hand over the information and his life. But if he wins, he walks away with his friends. The Black Leopard has completely lost himself to the madness. He arrogantly reminds this imbecile of a Ragnar of his place in the clan, then laughs and hits him with a murderous glare, mocking how little he understands the situation. The CBI tries to step in even though they can see Theo's deliberately stirring Axion up with his words. They urge him to stick to the plan, but Axion's done playing around. He accepts the challenge and walks forward to take Theo on, just like our boy wanted. The proctors watching realize things are going the exact opposite of what they planned. They're ready to jump in as soon as it looks like Axion's about to take a crushing defeat. The brutal warrior reminds his group not to interfere. It's a Ragnar duel, after all, and they need to respect the tradition of honor. He also tells them not to touch the hostages for the time being. Their fight kicks off with Theo landing the first slash and catching his opponent off guard. With that settled, both swordsmen get serious and clash on equal ground. Axion talks down to him the whole time and comes in with heavy attacks, trying to show Theo the gap between their strengths by unleashing a heaven dragon shout. The roaring attack even has Theo worried for his life for a second. In response, Theo charges up a slash of his own and answers with the triple dragon claw, completely severing Axion's attack and leaving him stunned. Standing there is a confident man who can actually challenge his best moves. Theo fires the trash talk right back and asks if this guy's really on a high enough level to be lecturing him. Seeing this clash go down, Orion is sweating bullets after the aftermath of Theo's latest attack. At first, he was pretty doubtful of the warrior's abilities, but now even he is starting to believe the imbecile actually has real strength. The situation's getting tense, and suddenly it looks like Axion might be the one who loses this fight. Concerned for his own ass, Orion wonders if he should switch sides while there's still time. He also figures Axion seriously underestimated his opponent. In the end, though, he decides against betraying Axion. Those bastard proctors from the Intelligence Bureau are watching way too closely. He figures they'll still take Theo down no matter what, so he orders the rest of his men to scatter and search for the remaining proctors. They want to stay the hell out of this battle. The story dips into Axion's past for a second. He was expected to seize the throne of their clan at a young age. Both his mother and uncle were pushing hard for his success so they could prosper. The Ragnar name was basically just a cover. Underneath it all, they still saw the boy as a Trovan. Axion can't help but praise his opponent's performance. Then he lunges in to strike Theo down. Unsurprisingly, the attack gets blocked with a confident little smile. He's acting exactly the way Theo wanted him to. We cut away from the fight and jump over to the council. They're talking about Theo's resurgence and the news that he's made contact with Axion. His supporters are pumped that he made it out safe and sound, while his haters are shocked the scoundrels didn't manage to finish him off. Axion's uncle is actually happy the kid survived. Nobody knows exactly what he's planning, but their own plans can still move forward once they extract the information from him. He's just waiting for that info to come out so he can send the high-ranking swordsman to destroy Theo. Suddenly, they get fresh intel about the fight happening between Theo and Axion right now. As you can imagine, the dude is scared shitless. This is the complete opposite of what he planned. Back to the fight. Theo pulls out his gesture footwork secret technique, giving him a serious edge in mobility and evasion. Axion's swinging his sword around like crazy, but nothing's connecting. Through the exchange, he's come to realize Theo's strength has grown immensely. A now serious Axion shoots him a sharp glare and remarks that the guy's not as fast as everyone presumed. Now that he's got a read on his movements, he hurls his sword at full speed straight at Theo's head. The technique catches Theo off guard because it brings back a nasty memory of a sword-throwing attack from his previous life. Back then, while he was lost in thought, a sharp blade had impaled him from the side. Axion claims that even if Theo's using a secret technique, his movements are still predictable, easy enough to pinpoint exactly where he'll appear next. Blood trails down the length of the sword, but it looks like Theo survived by catching the blade with his bare hands, and in that moment, he confirms the identity of the asshole who took him down in his first life. Axion was one of the people who betrayed him and helped bring about the downfall of the Ragnar clan. Filled with pure hatred, Theo is almost happy to confirm it. This is the bastard who knocked him down last time. The same day he died was the day he never even got to learn who the real perpetrators were that caused the collapse of the Rose Palace. He'd been weak, running blindly, and it was only thanks to Randon taking off his mask that he finally started to understand what the hell was going on. Evelyn's investigation had already tied Randon to the Camellia Palace. The rest was just connecting the dots. The ones who led the attack were none other than the bastards from the Trovan clan, and among those assholes, the only person who could pull off that uncommon sword-throwing technique was the sly bastard himself, Axion Ragnar, the one who betrayed them. The guy was so arrogant he even risked losing his own weapon. At first, Theo had only been suspicious. Now the truth was standing right in front of him. He grips the sword tight and in pure fury shatters the damn thing with his bare hand. Theo's dying to know what the hell motivates these people so much that they'd go to these lengths just to kill them. Seeing that display of raw physical strength leaves Axion speechless. Unfortunately for his enemies, Theo isn't the same man from his previous life. This time, he's hell-bent on prioritizing his own life and the lives of his comrades. Theo hurls the broken blade at Axion, who dodges it easily and talks shit about his aim and that pathetic imitation of the throwing technique. All of a sudden, Axion feels a massive wave of anger and bloodlust pouring off his opponent, a killing intent so monstrous it kicks up an enormous surge of mana. Axion's eyes go wide as he realizes Theo's been hiding his real skills this whole time. Our hero vanishes in the blink of an eye and reappears right under Axion for a devastating strike. The sheer force sends Axion flying onto the back foot. Now he's the one on defense against Theo's attacks, and Theo even manages to graze his face with a precise cut. Smirking at the impulsive warrior, Theo asks when Axion's finally going to stop holding back and pull out his full strength, poking the bear even more. Surprisingly, Theo's arm gets caught and Axion returns the favor by slicing his face. They're going at it on completely equal grounds now. Theo disappears from his sight again and delivers a slash so strong it knocks Axion's blade clean out of his hands. The guy's left wide open with zero defense. Theo quizzes him for a second before lining up his blade to drive it straight through Axion's damn stomach. He's about to take the kill shot, and at this distance there's no way Axion can dodge it. Meanwhile, over on Remington's side, he notices the blood trails look like someone's been dragging an injured body. The only person who comes to mind is Axion, even though it doesn't make much sense for him to act this recklessly, especially when first place was already locked in. Remington cleverly pieces together their plan to hunt Theo down during the second stage of the exam. Hocus is pissed they had to resort to such cowardly measures. Erica, on the other hand, isn't surprised at all. She says shit like this is pretty much expected in the clan's awakening ceremony. Remington knows that and admits it's exactly why he despises the Ragnar way of doing things, blindly worshipping raw strength and crossing every boundary in the process. A provoked Erica warns him to watch his tongue. Remington doesn't really give a damn and focuses on saving his friends' lives, just like Theo would. He asks for their help and Hocus is all in. Erica couldn't care less and starts to turn away. She only wanted to meet Theo, and the guy's nowhere to be found. She's got no interest in saving weak men, which prompts her brother to ask if she's really that cold. Remington gets why she's so intrigued by Theo and tells her that helping him out right now would only work in her favor long term. The three warriors take off to find the hostages' location. Remington's hoping they're still safe and sound by the time they get there, but they get stopped by a bunch of men. Warriors from the Scaled Dragon Society suddenly confront them, and it's clear this is a full-on betrayal. Orion's a little pissed that the white-haired punk ran off to Theo's side and is now hanging out with a bunch of meatheads. Hocus takes major offense at that, while Remington calmly warns his friend to take the easy path and just step aside. But this guy's clearly looking to catch some smoke, so he refuses to move. Left with no other option, he draws his blade. All three of them lunge forward to take on the Scaled Dragon Society. The scene cuts to the hostages. One of them has grabbed the shattered blade Theo threw earlier. Turns out the purpose of that throw wasn't to hit Axion at all. It was meant to land right next to the hostages. It's their one shot at escaping. The guy starts frantically working his knees, trying to saw through the ropes with the broken blade. Zooming back to the main battle, Axion's life gets saved at the very last second by one of the higher-ranking swordsmen. They finally decided to show up after reading the situation. This guy is Liam Trovan, and he's even ready to take the punishment for stepping in. Liam breaks up their clash and tells his men to look after Axion, then immediately launches an aggressive attack on Theo. The rest of the proctors are praising the young master for how he fought and even hand him his blade back. Axion doesn't look furious or anything, just disappointed. Liam's ferocious slashes are giving our boy a real tough time, but Theo's still managing to hold his own in a near-equal exchange. Liam comes in with a forward strike that Theo blocks cleanly. From this short clash, the high-ranking swordsman is actually pretty impressed by Theo's defense against both Axion and himself. Still, it's obvious Theo's no match for Liam's pure sword skill. With no other proctors nearby to monitor the fight, this is the perfect chance to kill the swordsman prodigy. For the sake of the Trovan clan, Liam goes for an aerial strike meant to finish Theo Ragnar in one shot. And then comes the plot twist. It's not Theo who gets impaled, it's Liam out of nowhere. The one who stuck him is none other than Axion, who's reminding his own men of the fair warning he gave at the start: do not interfere. The fight just took a wild turn, with Axion straight up betraying his own side. The other swordsmen confront the young master for lashing out so blindly. Axion whirls on them, furious that they actually thought he was going to lose. He calls it a complete mockery of his skills as the heir. Theo watches and flat out acknowledges that the guy has gone completely mad. As for Axion, he finally recognizes Theo's skill as a real Ragnar. His uncle had been feeding him delusions of grandeur since he was a kid, pushing him to climb all the way to the top and sit on the Ragnar throne. Axion claims that while Theo might be stronger in some ways, he's still weaker overall. He declares himself the man destined to become the strongest warrior and claim that throne. There's just no way he's losing this fight. Axion is ready to cut down anyone who stands in the way of his ambitions and lunges in with a slash. But the sword doesn't even come close to Theo, who's already used his speed to soar up into the sky. He hits Axion with a surprise attack that actually connects. Also, turns out Liam is still alive, just gravely injured. He tells his men to go help Axion no matter the cost. They need to kill Theo while they still have the chance. The high-ranking swordsmen aren't exactly thrilled with the idea, seeing how it just got Liam wrecked. Liam doesn't give a damn and orders them to move anyway, because if the young master doesn't make it out of this fight, they're all dead.